Chapter 1494. Looking at Fu Yunbu's outstretched hand, Xiao Hua was somewhat helpless. He unwillingly took off his storage pouch from his waist and handed it over. Fu Yunbu coldly took it and used a strand of divine sense to scan Xiao Hua. He opened the storage pouch, but when he finished looking at the contents of the storage pouch, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked at Xiao Hua and asked, "You talking about this?" Xiao Hua's face was full of innocence as he smiled apologetically. Junior is obviously talking about this. What else can it be? Junior has been practicing Wood Life Talisman for half a year under Senior Brother Halai's guidance, but I haven't made any progress. Senior should also know that Junior was a loose cultivator and didn't have any spirit stones on me. Senior Brother Halai also taught Junior that to do a good job, one must first sharpen the tools and insisted Junior use a high-grade talisman brush. Where could Junior find one? I could only borrow a talisman brush from the talisman crafting room. This is Junior's fault. Please forgive me. Wood Life Talisman? What wood life talisman are you practicing? Fu Yunbo frowned and asked curiously. You can refine Fireball Talisman. Earth restrains fire, and fire produces earth. You should be refining Earth Concealing Talisman. Why did you practice with Life Talisman? I seem to have told my disciple to let you practice Earth Concealing Talisman. Is that so? Xiao Hua's face was full of confusion as he said, "No wonder Junior hasn't made any progress. So it's like this? But, Senior Brother Halai? Who is your Senior Brother Halai?" Fu Yunbo asked. With your aptitude, there's no reason you can't refine with Life Talisman after practicing for half a year. Haha, Xiao Hua was very happy. First, he successfully diverted Fu Yunbo's attention, and second, he also complained about Fu Min. This Junior's aptitude is not good. It has nothing to do with Senior Brother Halai, right? Xiao Hua said pitifully. My Fu family has always been strict with the family rules. We definitely won't treat you differently just because you're a talisman master and not an inner court disciple. Speak. Fu Yunbo looked at the talisman masters below the stage and said sternly. Reporting to Patriarch, Disciple Fu Min is precisely Xiao Hua's helper senior brother. Seeing this, Fu Min ran a few steps forward, arriving in front of Fu Yunbo. Fu Min. Fu Yunbo frowned and asked, "What's going on? Why don't you teach Xiao Hua the Earth Concealing Talisman? Don't you know what I mean?" This. Fu Min slightly hesitated. Disciple indeed doesn't know Patriarch's intentions. Disciple only obtained the Skyward Pavilion's arrangement to have Disciple guide Xiao Hua in crafting talismans. Moreover, Disciple was also asked to give Xiao Hua some. Before Fu Min could finish her sentence, Fu Shan, who was standing in the distance, immediately ran over and knelt down in front of Fu Yunbo with a plop. He begged with his head, Patriarch, this is all my fault. I was muddle-headed and made a huge mistake. Fu Shan, what grudges do you have with Xiao Hua? Fu Yunbo asked very strangely. Disciple. Fu Shan slightly hesitated and told him about the talisman puppet. He said very regretfully, Disciple felt that he bestowed him a talisman crafting master with a different surname. It really hurt my Fu clan's face. However, Disciple had no choice but to idiot. Fu Yunbo didn't expect there to be such a dispute. He swept a glance at the talisman crafting masters present and angrily scolded. I already told all of you that talisman crafting masters with different surnames should be treated the same as the inner court disciples. I only allowed you to stay in the Skyward Pavilion because of your rules. You have really disappointed me. Fu Min, Fu Shan, you two stay here and wait until tomorrow to receive your punishment in the inner court. Yes, Disciple knows his mistake. Fu Min and Fu Shan's faces were ashen. It could be assumed that this punishment wouldn't be too light. Alas, everyone, this old master is truly ashamed. This kind of thing happened to Xiao Hua, so I presume others have also encountered it. This old master apologizes to everyone here. If such a situation occurs again in the future, you can directly look for Elder Fu Feng of the Skyward Pavilion, or you can directly look for this old master in the inner court. This old master will definitely give you a satisfactory answer. Wow, the talisman crafting masters present all clapped their hands. Their emotions were very high. Fu, you also saw that Senior Fu clearly distinguishes between kindness and hatred. Since he already said that he wouldn't pursue your mistake, then I presume he won't pursue it. If you took the talisman cultivation method, then take it out. We will all be your witnesses. Senior Fu won't go back on his words. A few talisman crafting masters next to him tactfully advised him. So that's how it is. I was wondering why Fu Yunbo was making a fuss over a minor issue. In such an urgent situation, he still pursued Fu Min and Fu Shan's responsibility to vent my anger. So it turns out he was just killing the chicken to warn the monkey. Xiaohua suddenly realized. But I really didn't do anything. Of course, he wouldn't admit it. Good. Fu Yunbo didn't get angry, but laughed instead. He threw the storage pouch to Xiaohua and asked, "Do you have any other storage pouches?" Yes. Xiaohua was extremely honest. He also took out the other pouches. Fu Yunbo looked at them one by one. Naturally, he didn't gain anything. Xiaohua, you can leave. Fu Yunbo waved his hand, and Xiaohua retreated to the back of the crowd. Seeing that Xiaohua was fine, Song Ying felt even more at ease. His eyes didn't seem to fear Fu Yunbo's gaze. Song Ying, you should also take the storage pouch. Fu Yunbo sneered. Song Ying calmly walked forward and handed the storage pouch over. Naturally, there wasn't what Fu Yunbo was looking for. Fu Yunbo's face became somewhat unsightly. His gaze was fixed on Song Ying. After a long while, he said, "Song Ying, don't think that if you don't admit it, this old man will believe you and forgive you. Senior Fu, this junior didn't take it. How do you want this junior to admit it?" Song Ying slightly shook his head and said, "Then what is this?" Fu Yunbo reached his hand into the storage pouch and took out a cultivation technique manual. He said, "This seems to be my Fu clan's basic cultivation technique, right?" Seeing this, Xiaohua's heart thumped. Although he was in a hurry and left in a hurry, he remembered that he had already taken the Yunxing talisman and the cultivation technique manual that Fu Zhu gave him. This Song Ying, just how many things did he take from the Fu clan? Sigh, reporting to Senior. Song Ying sighed and said, "This junior's cultivation is shallow. If I want to go further on the path of talisman crafting, I'm afraid that relying on my own cultivation technique won't be enough." Thus, this junior had the wrong idea and wanted to cultivate the Fu clan's cultivation technique in advance. This junior knows that he was wrong and is willing to accept punishment. Brilliant. Hearing this, Xiaohua secretly gave Song Ying a thumbs up in his heart. This flaw in the cultivation technique was successfully used by Song Ying to divert the suspicion of him taking the Yunxing talisman. Ha ha ha! Fu Yunbo raised his head and laughed loudly. Song Ying, this old man didn't think that you really have some skills. You can actually turn a round into a square and a square into a round. Come, bring Fu Zhu and Fu Ho up. Hearing the names of Fu Zhu and Fu Ho, Song Ying's face suddenly turned pale. He bowed and said, "Senior Fu, Fu Zhu and Fu Ho were deceived by this junior. Their punishment, this junior is willing to accept it. Don't talk to this old man about any conditions. As long as you take out the talisman, this old man will definitely not pursue the matter." Fu Yunbo sneered. "Senior, you should know that Fu Zhu and Fu Ho were with this junior the entire time tonight. This junior was also not allowed to enter the inner courtyard. How could the loss of the talisman have anything to do with this junior?" Song Ying argued. "What about Fu Ho?" Fu Yunbo asked with interest. Tonight, Fu Ho was on duty. There were disciples in the inner courtyard who saw Fu Ho enter the inner courtyard, but Fu Ho also disappeared. Didn't Fu Shan say it just now? Fu Ho and your old friends. Did you instruct her to do so? I'm innocent. Senior, since this junior already has Fu Zhu and Fu Ho, how could I possibly think about Fu Ho? Moreover, Fu Ho is far inferior to Fu Zhu and Fu Ho. How could this junior have any thoughts about her? Song Ying anxiously said, "Perhaps it was Fu Ho. She had some business with Fu Ho and stole the talisman. If that's the case, then it makes sense. Tell me, Fu Ho is a disciple on duty in the Talisman Hall. She was originally able to see the refinement method of the talisman. If Fu Ho's cultivation was high enough, she would also be able to comprehend the talisman. What did they use the talisman for? This junior is not a Fu Ho nor a Fu Ho. Naturally, I don't know what they use the talisman for. Senior, it's better for you to catch them quickly. The entire Jinhua mountain has been sealed off by our Fu clan disciples. Furthermore, the disciples patrolling the mountain have not seen them leave the mountain. Where do you think they could have gone? This junior is even more clueless about this. Sigh, after thinking about it, if it wasn't for you, a direct disciple of the Fu clan in the past, who would want to steal our Fu clan's legacy talisman? This senior has accompanied you for so long and given you plenty of opportunities. Why must you fall out with them? Fu Yunbo spoke for a long time and gradually lost his patience. It was easy for him to catch Song Ying, but difficult to find the talisman's whereabouts. The Fu clan was only a cultivation clan and did not have a good soul-searching technique or telepathy technique. This was why Fu Yunbo wasted so much time talking. As they spoke, Fu Zhu and Fu Ho were brought down from the high platform. The two of them saw Song Ying the moment they entered the skyward pavilion. When they saw that Song Ying's expression was normal, they knew that they had not exposed any flaws and were relieved. Greetings, family head. The two of them bowed. Well, I've already told you the ins and outs of the matter. You guys should also be honest. Fu Yunbo glanced at them and said, Song Ying? Fu Zhu and Fu Ho frowned. They looked at each other and said, We have already told the elders about senior brother he outside. If family head is willing to listen, we can repeat it again. Fu Yunbo sneered. I'm afraid you two don't know. Fu's real name is Song Ying. He is the direct descendant of the previous Fu clan head. The direct descendant of the previous family head? Fu Ho and Fu Zhu's faces were filled with surprise. Immediately, their eyes revealed a kind of understanding as they turned to look at Song Ying. This is all Senior Fu's guess. I have never admitted it. Song Ying laughed. Is that so? Fu Yunbo smiled and took a few steps forward, saying, Since you're not Song Ying, then it's easy. Actually, this senior admires your talent in talisman crafting and has always wanted to choose one of Fu Zhu and Fu Ho to dual cultivate with you. Chapter 1495. What kind of medicine is Fu Yunbo trying to sell with these words? Xiao Hua was confused. Songdo was also surprised, but he was overjoyed. He cupped his hands and said, If that's the case, then many thanks for senior's love. This junior has admired these two senior sisters for a long time. That's good. It's best that you two are in love with each other. Fu Yunbo said with a smile. Fu Zhu and Fu Ma are the direct bloodline of the previous generation's patriarch. This old man has always been worried about their future. If I were to find one or two for no reason, it would be slandering my Fu family's bloodline. What? Songda's face turned pale. His body swayed, and he almost couldn't stand straight. Ha ha! Fu Yunbo raised his head and laughed. Even Fu Yinshan couldn't have imagined that the dual cultivation partner this old man had betrothed to him was already pregnant when he escaped from Mount Jinhua. Unfortunately, you don't fit, otherwise Fu Zhu and Fu Ma would really be your direct bloodline sisters. Patriarch, what's going on? Fu Zhu and Fu Ma asked anxiously. Could it be that our father isn't the patriarch's nephew? Of course, Fu Yinshan is this old man's nephew. His father was the previous patriarch of the Fu family, which means he is this old man's brother. Fu Yunbo's face was full of smiles, but in Xiao Hua's eyes, this smile was incomparably sinister. Xiao Hua finally understood why Fu Zhu and Fu Ma were able to have a good impression of Songda. It was definitely not love at first sight, but a kind of bloodline relationship. Poor Songda. Xiao Hua's heart mourned for Songda, but then he thought of the dead Fu Ma, thought of that so-called Uncle Xiang, and even more thought of retribution and karma. Rumble. In Xiao Hua's space, an earth-shattering sound rang out. Under the heavenly Tao, the blurry hand of karma suddenly moved. It moved extremely fast and also extremely slowly. It seemed to have moved, but also seemed to have not moved. Xiao Hua was astonished and immediately withdrew his consciousness into the space. He saw that the hand of karma seemed to have become a bit clearer, and the heavenly Tao starry sky seemed to have become a bit more resplendent. Ha ha ha! A burst of arrogant laughter rang out from the sky above Mount Jinhua. Then, a divine mind several times stronger than Fu Yun was swept out from the sky. Who is it? Fu Yun's expression changed greatly. His body flew up, and just as he was about to fly out of the skyward pavilion, a fat figure appeared at the entrance. Xiao Hua quivered and pulled his mind out of the space. Middle stage foundation building cultivator? Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. He said inwardly, "Who is this person?" Xiao Hua's thoughts were also the thoughts of the other talisman crafting masters in the skyward pavilion. Under the powerful pressure of the middle stage foundation establishment cultivator, none of them were able to withstand it, and their bodies began to tremble. "Fellow Taoist, why have you barged into my Jinhua mountain in the middle of the night?" Fu Yunbo did not dare to be negligent. He also released his pressure to resist the other party's pressure. This old man naturally has his reasons for guarding Jinhua mountain at night. The fat cultivator withdrew his aura and smiled. "I do have an old grudge with the Fu clan." Who is this fellow Taoist?" Fu Yunbo frowned and cupped his hands. "I do not know this fellow Taoist. Moreover, my Jinhua mountain has always been magnanimous. How can we have any old grudges with this fellow Taoist?" "Old thief Fu, do you dare to say that you have no old grudges with my Liao clan? Do you dare to say that the decline of my Liao clan was not planned by your Fu clan?" A sharp female voice sounded. Everyone was puzzled. They looked towards the source of the voice and saw that it was Xianlan who walked out from the crowd with an impassioned expression on her face. "Ah!" Xiao Hua was surprised and secretly said, "There will be a good show to watch tonight." At the side, Fu Min, who had been regretting and waiting to return to the inner court to receive her punishment. Her eyeballs were about to fall out. "You are a talisman crafting master of my Fu clan?" Fu Yunbo frowned and asked curiously, "What is your relationship with the Liao clan? Why are you slandering me like this?" Old thief Fu. I's real name is Liao Xianlan. I am a direct descendant of the Liao clan of Gung Mountain. In order to find out why my Liao clan declined, I joined your Fu clan." Xianlan sneered and said, "The net of heaven grinds slowly but surely. I have only been in the skyward pavilion for half a year, and I have already found evidence of your Fu clan harming my Liao clan." Fu Yunbo smiled and said, "Little friend Liao, I'm afraid there is some misunderstanding. The Fu clan of Jinhua Mountain and the Liao clan of Gung Mountain are also related by marriage. How could you be so ruthless?" "Ha ha ha! Old thief Fu, I finally know your sinister intentions. You can even bear to use the bloodline of your Fu clan. Don't talk about being related by marriage." Liao Xianlan pointed at Fu Zhu and Fu Ai and said, "You must have known from the start that he Fu is a match for these two senior sisters. You even brought the three of them together. What kind of dirty thoughts do you have? Being related by marriage with the Liao clan, bah? I'm afraid it is just an excuse for you to give the Liao clan your alchemy skills." "This? Little friend Liao, what do you mean by that?" Fu Yunbo smiled helplessly and said, "I don't know whether they are related by marriage or not. Didn't you see it just now? He still doesn't admit that he is related by marriage. How could I know that they are related by blood?" Fu Yunbo, the foundation establishment cultivator, waved his hand and said, "I don't care about your Fu clan's matters. I am Chiu Ming Wei, an old acquaintance of the Liao clan of Gung Mountain. The Liao clan's younger generation begged me, and I had no choice but to stand up for them. However, the Fu clan of Jinhua Mountain is also a famous cultivation clan in the country of Shi. I will give you a chance to explain things clearly. Otherwise, my fellow Taoists will say that I am bullying the young." "Oh so, it is fellow Taoist Chiu." Fu Yunbo cupped his hands and said, "Since little friend Liao said that you have evidence, please show it to me. If it is really done by my Fu clan, I will definitely admit it." Old thief Fu. It seems like you won't cry until you see the coffin." Liao Xianlan sneered and said, "If I didn't know the truth, how would I dare to invite Senior Chiu here? Please show it to me, little friend Liao. Fu Yunbo was still calm. Liao Xianlan cleared her throat and told the details she got from Fu Min. However, Fu Yunbo's face didn't change at all. After Liao Xianlan finished, Fu Yunbo smiled and said, Little friend Liao, these words have been rumored for decades, but what is the truth? Little friend Liao, do you have any evidence? Evidence? Liao Xianlan sneered and pointed at Fu Min, who was trembling like a sieve. She said, This Fu Min is the evidence. Fu Min? What kind of evidence is he? Fu Yunbo didn't understand. Everything I know was told by Fu Min. Moreover, he also said where these things were recorded in your Fu clan's Fu clan hall. Liao Xianlan said proudly. Fu Min, these things were you the one who said it? Fu Yunbo asked coldly. This disciple didn't say this. Fu Min wasn't an idiot, and he stuttered and answered. Little friend Liao, you see, Fu Min didn't admit it. What you said is just a one-sided story. Who would believe you if you said it without any basis at all? Don't you think so, Taoist Chiu? Fu Yunbo was very tense and said, Besides, little friend Liao was also in the Skyward Pavilion just now. This Fu Min is a dirty villain who doesn't know right from wrong. How can you believe his words? Yes, everything disciple said is nonsense. Please punish me, Patriarch. Fu Min quickly said. Ha, you heard it, old thief Fu. What he said to you is nonsense, which means he admitted it. Liao Xianlan laughed. Fu Yunbo glanced at Liao Xianlan and didn't answer. You are the one who is talking nonsense. Fu Min plucked up her courage and said, I saw you as my confidant and taught you all the 5 elements yellow talisman. But you actually framed me. What about me? Liao Xianlan said sarcastically, This only shows that you have eyes but don't know the depth. My Liao family's 5-element yellow talisman technique is several times more profound than your Fu family. Do you think I want your 5-element yellow talisman? Ridiculous. You don't even want to give a little wood life talisman to Xiaohua. Aren't you just jealous of his good aptitude? You even taught him many mistakes, making Xiaohua practice for half a year and still not get it right. You are such a petty person. How can you be called a man? Cough, cough. Qiu Mingwei coughed twice and said, Taoist Fu, Liao Xianlan has said everything. Then, we will go to the Talisman Hall, she mentioned, and find the ancient books that recorded these things. Won't we know with a look? Fu Yunbo's expression changed slightly, and he said with a bitter smile, If it was yesterday, I wouldn't be so unreasonable and would immediately invite you to the Talisman Hall to prove the Fu family's innocence. But today, my Fu family has just lost our ancestral talisman refining method. Before the talisman is found, no one can enter the Talisman Hall. Qiu Mingwei sneered and said, So, the Fu family is prepared to admit this matter? AI, Taoist Qiu, you're making things difficult for I. Think about it. According to what young friend Liao said, the so-called alchemy technique was given to the Liao family by the Fu family's previous patriarch, who is also Ai's brother, Fu Yunhai's dual cultivation partner, Liao Mei. That is Liao Mei's personal item and not my Fu family's. The consequences of this item are not something my Fu family is willing to bear. Fu Yunbo said unhurriedly. Besides, if Taoist Fu admits that this item was given by my Fu family, but my Fu family didn't ask the Liao family to open it, right? They should have kept it well and returned it to my Fu family when my Fu family asked for it. If the Liao family opened it privately, will my Fu family have to bear the consequences? Also, ever since I took over the Fu family, I've been searching for this alchemy technique that had disappeared from the Fu family. I didn't expect it to be hidden in Gung Mountain. Young friend Liao, if possible, I would like to ask you to return this alchemy technique to my Fu family. After all, this was something that belonged to Ai's brother. Fu Yunbo was much more eloquent than Liao Xianlan and had already pushed this matter to her. Liao Xianlan was speechless. Why would there be so many reasons to wait for me? Qiu Mingwei laughed and waved his hand. Fu Min slowly flew up from the ground and into his hand. You will know when you come to the Talisman Hall. Chapter 1496. How could Fu Yunbo allow Fu Min to fall into Qiu Mingwei's hands? He waved his hand, and tried to pull Fu Min back with the same force. What? Fu Yunbua, are you going to stop me? Xiao Mingwei didn't use too much strength and only asked coldly. Fellow Taoist Xiao, this Fu Min is a disciple of my Fu clan. No matter what, I can't let other cultivators take her away in front of my eyes. Fu Yunbua argued. Good, good, good. Xiao Mingwei shouted 3 times in a row and laughed loudly. He just lacked a reason to make a move. It would be best if Fu Min was in his hands. Even if he didn't, what was wrong with that? Xiao Mingwei waved his hand, and an unparalleled force grabbed Fu Min like a big hand and pulled her to his side. At the same time, Xiao Mingwei released the pressure of a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator and pressed down on Fu Yunbua like an avalanche. Fu Yunbua complained in his heart, but he didn't dare to be negligent. He circulated his magic power and released his pressure at the same time. Rumble. There was a muffled sound like thunder. When the two kinds of pressure collided, it set off a wave of air. Walala! The brilliance on the 4 walls and the roof of the skyward pavilion was constantly flickering. A large part of the restriction on the roof was destroyed. If the restrictions on the skyward pavilion were already like this, how could the numerous talisman masters and inner court disciples of the Fu clan who were scattered in the pavilion withstand the pressure? All of them fell to the ground, then ran out of the skyward pavilion as if they had pissed their pants. Good. This is really too good. Xiaohua stood at the side and watched happily. Such a chaotic scene was the best time to escape. Xiaohua's thoughts were 100 times more intelligent than Xiaohua. How could he not think of this? Just as the battle between the 2 foundation establishment cultivators began, he flew towards Fu Zhu and Fu Ai. He pulled the 2 of them and rushed out of the skyward pavilion. The chi waves produced by the pressure were pushing them forward. At the edge of the high platform, Elder Fu Feng, Elder Lu Yun, and the others couldn't interfere in the battle between the Foundation establishment experts, but they could clearly see the movements of Xiao Mingwei, and Xiao Mingwei had already blended into the crowd and fled. Fu Feng glanced at Lu Yun, and Lu Yun also glanced at Fu Feng. She pointed at Xiao Mingwei and asked worriedly, Elder Fu, who is this Xiao Mingwei? Shouldn't we go and help the patriarch? Fu Feng understood and said in an extremely worried tone, Yes, this old man wants to help, but after all, my cultivation is limited. It's better for me to stay here and guard the array. Yes, what Elder Fu said makes sense. Lu Yun nodded slightly. At this moment, a loud pong sound was heard. Xiao Mingwei's magic art collided with Fu Yunbua's magic art, causing an explosion. Endless heat waves surged out, rushing towards the 4 walls and roof of the skyward pavilion. This is bad. The skyward pavilion is no longer safe. Elder Fu Feng's expression changed slightly. He waved his sleeves and shot out several yellow talismans. His body flew towards the back of the skyward pavilion. Pa pa pa! A series of chaotic sounds were heard, followed by a series of collapsing walls. From midair, the roof of the skyward pavilion came crashing down on everyone. Xiao Mingwei, Fu Yunbo was furious and shouted, How did my Fu family offend you? How dare you destroy my skyward pavilion? This old man will not let you off. Ha ha! This old man wants to see how you will not let me off. Xiao Mingwei laughed heartily. With a wave of his sleeve, the bluestone and wooden beams that were falling from the sky all fell to the sides. However, before Xiao Mingwei could finish laughing, his exasperated voice was heard again. Fu Yunbua, you are really ruthless? Crash! At this moment, the broken walls of the skyward pavilion fell. Fu Yunbua was not as carefree as Xiao Mingwei. He stood up from a pile of broken bricks and tiles, his head covered in dust. Are you talking about Fu Min, fellow Taoist Xiao? Fu Yunbua flew into midair and said curiously, Isn't it because fellow Taoist Xiao destroyed the skyward pavilion? Fu Min couldn't dodge in time and was killed by the roof. If we were to investigate the cause, fellow Taoist Xiao is the main culprit. You, Fu Yunbua. Fu Min is a qi refining stage cultivator. How about you be killed by a collapsed roof? Who would believe you? Xiao Mingwei said in exasperation. Fu Yunbua shrugged. and looked as carefree as Chiu Ming-wei. He looked at the ruins on the ground and said meaningfully, "I don't know if you believe me or not, but I believe you." Ha ha! Fu Yunbo. I didn't expect the famous Fu family to be so despicable. Chiu Ming-wei waved his hand and took out a strange-looking magic tool from his storage bag. It was long on one end and flat on the other. He sneered and said, "This old man is surprised. You have been in the Skyward Pavilion all this time. Even when this old man took action, you still stayed in the Skyward Pavilion. It turns out that you wanted to take advantage of the collapse of the Skyward Pavilion to get rid of Fu Min. Without Fu Min, even with Liao Xianlan, this old man can't do anything to you, right?" Fellow Taoist Chiu is a foundation establishment stage cultivator. Your cultivation is higher than I. You can say whatever you want. How can I refute you? Fu Yunbo didn't seem to be afraid and said coldly, "Very well, if that's the case, this old man." Chiu Ming-wei activated his magic power, and a ball of orange light shone from the magic tool in his hand. Fellow Taoist Chiu, don't be anxious. Look at what this is. Seeing that Chiu Ming-wei was about to attack, Fu Yunbo reached out and took out something from his clothes and threw it at Chiu Ming-wei. "What is it?" Chiu Ming-wei was stunned. He scanned it with his divine sense and found that it was a token. Elder token of the Splendid Sect? Chiu Ming-wei caught the token and looked at it carefully. His face changed greatly. "Yes, this is the token of Splendid Sect's Elder Wu Herong." Fu Yunbo smiled faintly. You, what is the meaning of this? Why do you have Elder Wu's token?" Chiu Ming-wei was very familiar with this famous cultivator from the state of Shi. His command medallion didn't usually appear in the cultivation world, but if it did, it would be equivalent to Wu Herong personally making an appearance. Anyone who disobeyed his orders would end up, needless to say, nothing. Fu Yunbo smiled and said, "Elder Wu's dual cultivation partner is my Fu clan senior. This token was requested by my Fu clan senior to protect my Golden Mount Hua. Just like how fellow Taoist Chiu cherishes old friendships with the Liao clan of Gung Mountain, Elder Wu cherishes old friendships with my Fu clan. Of course, I also know that this is all a misunderstanding. Fellow Taoist Chiu received little friend Liao's information, and little friend Liao received Fu Min's nonsense. This caused fellow Taoist Chiu to misunderstand my Fu clan. This humble Taoist also admires fellow Taoist Chiu's warm-hearted heart. My Fu clan will treat this matter as if it never happened and will not tell Elder Wu." Chiu Ming-wei's expression changed several times, and the corner of his eyes twitched slightly. After a long while, he sighed slightly and waved his hand. The token returned to Fu Yunbo's hand. Then, Chiu Ming-wei lowered his head and looked at the Fu clan's disciples who were scattered around Golden Mount Hua. Just as he was about to speak, for divine senses rapidly descended from the sky from all directions of Golden Mount Hua. In the blink of an eye, for figures appeared in the four directions of Golden Mount Hua and firmly surrounded it. Chiu Ming-wei was shocked, and Fu Yunbo was even more shocked. Foundation establishment stage cultivators were already considered experts in the cultivation world. In places like Jingbo City and Yinyuan City, they could still be seen from time to time. Since when did Fu clan's Golden Mount Hua have foundation establishment stage cultivators? But tonight, Chiu Ming-wei came first. Before the matter of Gung Mountain's Liao clan could be settled, another 4 foundation establishment stage cultivators came. Although these 4 foundation establishment stage cultivators were all in the early stage of foundation establishment stage, but it was enough to make Fu Yunbo's heart break. Fu Yunbo's heart was trembling. He held Elder Wu's token tightly in his hand and flew up to greet them. He asked loudly, "May I know, why have the 4 of you come to my Golden Mount Hua?" As he spoke, Fu Yunbo held Elder Wu's token in front of his chest. If the 4 of them made any movements, he would show them the token. "Are you the head of the Fu clan of Golden Mount Hua?" Fu Yunbo, a clear voice asked. "Yes, I am I." Fu Yunbo turned around and cupped his hands towards the cultivator beside him. "Fellow Taoist, you are. I am Shanghua Sect Chiu Yu." The cultivator smiled and returned the greeting. Shanghua Sect? Hearing that it was Xianghua sect, and that Qiu Yu was so polite, Fu Yunbu's heart relaxed. He quickly said, "May I know why fellow Taoist Qiu Yu has come to my Golden Mount Hua? Is it Elder Wu?" "It has nothing to do with Elder Wu. I am here with fellow Taoists from Xuanyin School and Qiqiao sect." Qiu Yu said, "Ah, the three major sects of Xi are here." Fu Yunbo was even more shocked. Qiu Mingwei was also shocked. He also flew forward and cupped his hands. "I am Qiu Mingwei from 10,000 Poisons sect. Greetings to the three fellow Taoists." Although Qiu Mingwei was a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator, he didn't dare to be too rude to the disciples of the three great sects who were slightly weaker than him. Similarly, the four cultivators didn't dare to be negligent and bowed in return. "Fellow Taoist Qiu, may I know why you have come to my Golden Mount Hua in the middle of the night?" Fu Yunbo was no longer in a sorry state, as he asked with a smile. "Oh, I am here on the orders of my sect master. I want to ask if your Golden Mount Hua Fu clan has a talisman master named Xiao Hua." Qiu Yu asked word by word. "Xiao Hua? Of course there is." Fu Yunbo said curiously. "Xiao Hua is the talisman master that my Fu clan just recruited this year. Just now, he was still at the Skyward Pavilion." As he spoke, Fu Yunbo swept his divine perception in the general direction of Xiao Hua. At the same time, the four cultivators in the air also swept their divine perception in the direction of Golden Mount Hua. Speaking of Xiao Hua, when the Skyward Pavilion collapsed just now, he was the one who rushed out first. He also knew that it would be much easier for him to escape. He was also familiar with the road, so there was no need to worry. He could have escaped. However, he wanted to know the outcome of the grudge between Liao Xianlan and the Fu clan. He was also curious about the fate of Fu Min, so he stayed at Golden Mount Hua. After all, these matters had nothing to do with him, so what was there to worry about? Chapter 1497. Meanwhile, Xiao Hua was watching the show on Jinhua Mountain. Seeing the sudden change in the situation, for disciple from the three major sects of cultivation appeared in midair. Xiao Hua secretly applauded in his heart. "Damn, looks like this Fu Yunbo is full of evil. Today, he will suffer retribution." But when that Jinhua sect disciple Qiu Yu called out Xiao Hua, that voice was like a thunderclap that smashed Xiao Hua silly. A kind of extremely absurd feeling arose spontaneously. What does this have to do with me? However, at this moment, Xiao Hua's heart suddenly gave birth to a kind of understanding. Kai Hongfeng. Of course, the matter of Xiao Hua meeting Qian Qinghua in Shihuang Town was only known by Qin Yang's Kai family's head, Elder Kai Hongfeng. If he didn't inform the three major sects of cultivation in Shi, who would know that he took Qian Qinghua's pearl? Of course, Xiao Hua could deny it, but what kind of colossus are the three major sects? Who knows if they have some kind of divine ability that can discover Xiao Hua's secret, or use some kind of soul-searching technique to get what they want? Therefore, Xiao Hua didn't dare to take the risk. When that Qiu Yu called out his name, he didn't hesitate and twisted his body. His entire figure suddenly disappeared and immediately escaped into Jinhua Mountain. Xiao Hua didn't move. He reckoned that several foundation-building cultivators would still need to search for a while. As soon as he moved, all of his divine senses swept over. Motherfucker, Kai Hongfeng really is among the four foundation-building cultivators. Xiao Hua cursed inwardly as Kai Hongfeng's familiar divine sense swept over. "Chase!" Qiu Yu also didn't hesitate. With a wave of his hand, the four people surrounded Xiao Hua and chased after him. At this time, Qiu Yu and Kai Hongfeng surrounded Jinhua Mountain. Xiao Hua had nowhere to run and could only escape underground. However, how could Xiao Hua compare to the divine abilities of Foundation establishment cultivators? The moment Xiao Hua escaped underground, the four people's divine senses had already locked onto him. The four of them all flew down towards Jinhua Mountain, and each of them escaped underground to surround Xiao Hua. What should I do? At the same time that Xiao Hua dove into the ground, he also released his perception, allowing him to clearly sense the four people's divine senses and position. Seeing the four people surrounding him, Xiao Hua's heart was burning with anxiety as he thought to himself, "Damn it, if I had just left, I wouldn't have ended up like this." Pitiful Xiao Hua, who was only a minor loose cultivator of the fourth level of the refining stage, was actually captured by three early-stage foundation establishment cultivators from the country of Shi and a foundation establishment cultivator from a cultivation family. Fu, fellow Fu. Xiao Mingwei stood in the air. Without Xie Yu's invitation, he didn't want to rashly attack. He asked in shock, "This is just a talisman master from your Fu family?" I'm not sure either." Fu Yunbo was similarly stunned, and he was endlessly bewildered in his heart. Is it worth it for a mere qi refining cultivator to cause such a big commotion? However, while Fu Yunbo was paying attention to Xiao Hua, he was also paying more attention to Tsong Ying. Just now, he was afraid of leaving something behind for Qiu Mingwei to use against him, so he recklessly thought of a way to kill Fu Min. Now that he was free, he naturally wanted to capture Tsong Ying. However, after Fu Yunbo used his divine sense to sweep the surrounding area of Mount Jinhua, he didn't find Tsong Ying's figure. Even Fu Zhu and Fu Ho were nowhere to be seen. Vile spawn, Fu Yunbo cursed in his heart, but he also knew that at this time, the disciples of the three great sects had come to Mount Jinhua, so he couldn't act blindly without thinking and provoke them. Moreover, Tsong Ying was also familiar with Mount Jinhua, so who knew where he went? Since he couldn't send the disciples of the Fu family to search Mount Jinhua, it was useless to be anxious at this time. Elder Lu Yun and Elder Fu Feng were naturally surprised, but the most surprised were Fu Shan and Liao Xianluan. This, Xiao Hua. Is he the Xiao Hua that I scolded a few days ago? That's right. A feeling of extreme absurdity, extreme hilarity, and extreme lingering fear filled the hearts of the two. Immediately, Mount Jinhua became cold and silent. Only the sound of the wind was like a wave blowing the mountain forest. The shock, surprise, fear, envy, and so on of the people on Mount Jinhua had nothing to do with Xiao Hua. Right now, he was burning with anxiety. On one hand, he was rapidly escaping deeper into Mount Jinhua, and on the other, he was bitterly thinking of a way to escape. Based on his experience of using escape techniques in the magma of Flame Forest Swamp, although there weren't any restrictions at the bottom of Mount Jinhua, he couldn't possibly escape deeper. Moreover, the four foundation establishment cultivators above him could also escape through the earth. Whether it was earth escape talismans or earth escape techniques, in the end, they would definitely be able to capture Xiao Hua, unless this young master's cultivation has also reached foundation establishment. Xiao Hua's mind finally came to this conclusion. Of course, this was impossible. Li Zongbao's aptitude was only at foundation establishment. Zhuo Qingyuan's cultivation was only at the 11th level of qi refining. Foundation establishment was as difficult as ascending the heavens. But at this time, Xiao Hua suddenly thought of Xiao Mao. He thought of the method that Xiao Mao had taught him to integrate magic tools into his body. At the same time, he also thought of the fire marrow flame crystal. Although Xiao Mao hadn't said that the method was to integrate the fire marrow flame crystal, didn't Zhuo Qingyuan's words afterwards, as well as Xiao Mao's traces of despair, clearly indicate that the method was to use the fire marrow flame crystal? Since Xuanyin cult wanted to use the fire marrow flame crystal to increase the cultivation of their disciples, then wouldn't Xiao Hua also be able to use the fire marrow flame crystal to increase his own cultivation? Moreover, Xiao Hua himself also cultivated the dragonization art. The meridians in his entire body were different from those given to others. In that case, the fire marrow flame crystal was even more capable of being integrated. This was Xiao Hua's final life-saving straw. If he didn't seize it now, when would he? As Xiao Hua thought of this, he sensed that the four foundation establishment cultivators were already very close. Xiao Hua clenched his teeth and waved his hand, taking out the fire marrow flame crystal from the space. Magic power surged on his arm. According to Xiao Mao's words, he slapped the fire marrow flame crystal onto his arm. The method that Xiao Mao taught him was indeed effective. The fire marrow flame crystal had already touched Xiao Hua's arm and immediately integrated into it. However, immediately after, the situation was out of Xiao Hua's control. According to his plan, he would integrate the fire marrow flame crystal into the meridians of his arm, and then use the fire raising the heavens technique to refine the fire marrow flame crystal. It was exactly the same as absorbing the fire-type spiritual energy from the top-grade fire-type spirit stone in the past. Who would have thought that once the fire marrow flame crystal integrated into Xiao Hua's skin, it would be like a matchstick that ignited the entire forest? Of course, that fire marrow flame crystal was the matchstick, and Xiao Hua's body was the burning forest. Xiao Hua saw that the fire marrow flame crystal had entered his body and immediately turned into a ball of burning flame, igniting his arm. Moreover, that flame followed his arm and rapidly spread throughout his body. Oh no, I overreached myself. Xiao Hua was greatly shocked. There's no need for them to capture me. This young master is finished. At this moment, Xie Yu, Kai Hongfeng, and the others were also stunned. Under the ground of Mount Jinhua, Xiao Hua's entire body suddenly turned into a ball of flame. That flame was extremely overbearing. Although they were far away and only used their divine senses to lock onto Xiao Hua, the scorching heat of the flame had already burned their divine senses. They were so frightened that they immediately retracted their divine senses. Following the feeling, they followed the fiery ball under their feet, slowed down, and chase down. Pressure, divine senses can't do it. Quickly use your pressure. Yu hurriedly transmitted his voice. However, when the pressure of 4 Foundation establishment cultivators simultaneously pressed down on that overbearing flame, not only was the flame not extinguished, it even slightly swelled, as if it wanted to counterattack the pressure back. This, Yu and the others hurriedly retracted their pressure, somewhat at a loss. They had never encountered such a strange thing. Yu and the others were like this, and Fu Yunbua and Xiao Mingwei, who were in midair above Mount Jinhua, were even more so. They no longer dared to release their divine senses. Moreover, just when Xiao Hua was in danger, the 13,200 points on Xiao Hua's body suddenly flashed. Like 13,200 little mouths, they swallowed the flames that burned near them. Immediately, an unprecedented heart-wrenching pain spread throughout Xiao Hua's entire body. Looking at the muscles beside the 13,200 points, there were faintly flickering threads of fire. These threads of fire burned Xiao Hua's muscles at a speed invisible to the naked eye. However, at the same time that the muscles were burned, new muscles regenerated at a speed invisible to the naked eye. The new muscles were even thicker than the previous ones, and contained even more things that were not there before. Xiao Hua was really unable to bear it. This kind of rapid tempering akin to life and death made him feel like he was undergoing the cruelest torture in the world. That was not all. Xiao Hua's 1,200 spots on his body were tightly attached to his bones. Just as these spots were absorbing the flames, an enormous suction force was emitted from his bones, sucking the flames into his bones. His originally grayish-white bones suddenly turned into a white jade, and 20% of these white jade bones were densely covered with crimson blood vessels. As the bones absorbed the flames, it was as if they were using the flames to refine the white jade bones. The crimson blood vessels gradually spread out, gradually covering the entire bones. Now is the time. Although Xiao Hua was in so much pain that he let out a low cry, his mind was still very clear. Seeing that close to 60% of the flames were absorbed by the points and bones in his body, he immediately used the technique to move the flames into his meridians. Sure enough, under Xiao Hua's efforts, the flames quickly approached his meridians. However, a strange thing happened again. Just as the flames approached his meridians, the meridians in Xiao Hua's body trembled, as if they were excited. It can't be. Xiao Hua was almost about to cry. Xiao Hua's meridians had always been quietly cultivating the dragon transformation art, and at this moment, the dragon transformation art in his meridians suddenly activated. His meridians were really like a dragon, instantly sucking all the flames into his meridians. Fortunately, Xiao Hua was very glad, and hurriedly used the raising flames to burn the heavens, wanting to refine the flames in his meridians. However, after circulating the technique a few times, the flames in his meridians were completely out of Xiao Hua's control. What should I do? Xiao Hua anxiously thought. I can only use the heavenly law embodiment technique. Xiao Hua very naturally thought of his other qi refining technique. Chapter 1498. What's going on? Xiao Hua was bewildered. At this moment, Xiao Hua's dragon transformation art was once again circulating crazily, absorbing the majority of the flames in his meridians into his meridians. In an instant, Xiao Hua's meridians twitched and flashed with a red light. The dragon transformation art was advancing at a speed several times faster than before. But Xiao Hua looked at the remaining flames in his meridians and wanted to cry again. He wanted to rely on the fire attribute spiritual energy to strengthen his cultivation. Who knew that when the fire essence flame crystal entered his body, 90% of the spiritual energy was divided up in the blink of an eye? How could he escape? A fly is also meat. Xiao Hua was depressed and didn't dare to take out the fire essence flame crystal again. He hurriedly circulated the heavenly laws embodiment art to see if he could refine the flames formed by the fire essence flame crystal. The heavenly laws embodiment art was indeed an exquisite art. It was far from something a shallow art like the heavenly laws embodiment art could compare to. As Xiao Hua practiced it for the first time, the true energy in his meridians immediately wrapped around the towering and motionless flames in an extremely mysterious manner. Following the circulation of the art, the true energy circulated in his meridians. However, a strange change occurred again. The originally very hot flames were admittedly somewhat overbearing, but in front of the 13,200 points on Xiao Hua's body, in front of Xiao Hua's sparkling jade-like bones, and even in front of the meridians refined by the dragon transformation art, they were slightly docile and didn't reject the absorption. But when Xiao Hua used the cultivation art to refine the flames suddenly soared, as if they were transforming from one thing to another, magnifying by more than 10 times. In the blink of an eye, a torrent of fire attribute spiritual energy was born from the flames, causing Xiao Hua's meridians to swell by several times. Moreover, it flowed along Xiao Hua's meridians. As expected, in just a moment, Xiao Hua's meridians would be destroyed by this torrent of fire attribute spiritual energy, and he would die. Shit! Xiao Hua's eyes almost split open when he saw this. 90% of the fire essence flame crystal was used in other places. It wasn't easy to leave one place for his qi refining cultivation, but such a mistake appeared. He did not dare to hesitate at all. Immediately, he circulated the heavenly laws embodiment technique to refine the fire-type Ling Qi. At the same time, he desperately circulated the dragon transformation art to protect his meridians from being damaged. There was a roar that sounded like a dragon's roar. The meridians that had been channeling the dragon transformation art with all their might suddenly trembled. It was as though a real dragon's body had appeared. As the spiritual energy rapidly flowed forward, the meridians also expanded. At the same time, countless flames seeped out from the meridians. Looking from afar, there was another tongue sound. The flames that were sucked into Xiao Hua's body earlier spat out again, lingering around Xiao Hua's body. However, the flames this time were different from before. This flame was the result of Xiao Hua using the heavenly laws embodiment technique to circulate the flame within his meridians. At the same time this flame was being refined into true qi, it also transformed into magic power that surged throughout Xiao Hua's entire body. This magic power flame followed Xiao Hua's earth escape technique and rushed out of Xiao Hua's body. Good. Seeing that his meridians did not explode under the impact of the enormous fire-type Ling Qi, and that the heavenly laws embodiment technique was also working hard to refine the spiritual energy, Xiao Hua was overjoyed. Although this kind of refinement was somewhat slow, his magic power would definitely gradually increase. He thought that he could escape. However, at this moment, Xiao Hua suddenly felt an unparalleled, enormous force coming from below him. It forcefully supported him, not allowing him to escape downwards. Not good. Xiao Hua was immediately alarmed. He knew that it was because his cultivation was limited that he could not escape deeper. Sensing his surroundings again, Qiyu, Kai Hongfeng, and the others were already not far from him. It was just that for some reason, they had slowed down their earth escape technique. Xiao Hua did not think that they had encountered the same problem as him. His eyes turned rapidly as he racked his brains to think of a way to escape. Let's do it this way. Xiao Hua clenched his teeth, and a plan came to his mind. He stirred up all the magic power in his body. The flames outside his body were probably half a foot high. His entire body exerted all his strength to burrow into the ground. After burrowing down another 10 feet or so, the flames within Xiao Hua's meridians were rapidly refined. Countless amounts of true qi poured into Xiao Hua's meridians, rapidly approaching the late stage of the 4th level of qi refining. However, around Xiao Hua's body, an even greater force prevented him from burrowing down. Seeing that he could not burrow down even half an inch no matter how much his cultivation increased, Xiao Hua abruptly changed directions and burrowed towards the surface of Jinhua Mountain. In an instant, Xiao Hua's own earth escape technique and the force of the earth squeezing him out. The two forces caused Xiao Hua's speed to more than double in an instant. However, Xiao Hua was still not at ease. He mobilized all the true qi in his body and crazily refined the fire marrow flame crystal. He used all his magic power on earth escape technique without any regard for his life. Qiyu, Kai Hongfeng, and the others were greatly alarmed when they saw this. They were apprehensive about the flames that suddenly appeared on Xiao Hua's body that could injure people's divine sense. They also knew that with Xiao Hua's cultivation and earth escape talisman, Xiao Hua could not possibly burrow deeper. Therefore, they firmly sealed off all the directions of Xiao Hua's escape, slowly preparing to catch a turtle in a jar. Of course, the direction they sealed off was based on Xiao Hua's earth escape technique. Xiao Hua's sudden increase in speed instantly caused a flaw to appear in their encirclement. Quick! Qiyu immediately transmitted his voice. We will also immediately increase our speed. Don't let this guy escape our encirclement. Soon after, Qiyu slapped his hand and took out a net-like magic tool from his storage pouch. However, just as he was about to activate it, he hesitated. Right now, they were under Jinhua Mountain, surrounded by Earth. If it wasn't an Earth-type magic tool, it would be suppressed by Earth-type spiritual energy and unable to display its effect. Rather than using a magic tool to delay time, it would be better to catch up to Xiao Hua. Therefore, Qiyu only held the magic tool in his hand and still activated his magic power, preparing to intercept Xiao Hua from above his head. Size still lacking a bit. Xiao Hua's figure rapidly burrowed towards the ground. In his heart, he was also estimating the distance between him and the 4 people. Right at this moment, the blood-like red threads on Xiao Hua's bones were already close to 30% under the tempering of the fire marrow flame crystal. His entire skeleton faintly flashed with red light. Xiao Hua felt his body suddenly become lighter. His earth escape technique speed once again increased by 20%. Bone tempering? The origin of fire? Xiao Hua suddenly recalled the information he obtained in the space. Could it be this fire marrow flame crystal is the origin of fire? It's the key to bone tempering? Xiao Hua was only puzzled. However, this wasn't a good time to think carefully. Xiao Hua released his perception without hesitation and flew straight towards the center of the 4 people's encirclement. Sure enough, Yu and the other three also understood Xiao Hua's thoughts. Seeing that Xiao Hua's speed had increased again, they also slightly widened the distance between them. They still maintained their encirclement and were not in a hurry to approach Xiao Hua. Seeing this, Xiao Hua knew that his thoughts had been perceived by these four people. He secretly sneered. This young master's speed is still increasing. Wait until the fire marrow flame crystal in this young master's meridians is refined. Then, my speed might not be slower than yours. Let's see how you're going to catch up. However, just as Xiao Hua was about to fly to the ground, Xiao Hua's heart suddenly jumped. His forehead was covered in sweat. Damn it! How could I forget Fu Yunbua and Xiao Mingwei? One of them is from the Golden Mount Hua's Fu clan, which is related to some elder of the Shanghua sect. The other is from the 10,000 Poisons sect, which is a sinister sect. Just now, they didn't chase after this young master because they were afraid of delaying the arrangements of the three sections. If this young master were to rush out like this, wouldn't I fall into their hands? I'm afraid that Xiao Yu and the others also have this idea, which is why they let this young master calmly escape to the ground. What should I do? Seeing that he was about to rush out of the ground, Xiao Hua could almost sense that two Foundation establishment cultivators were standing above him, eyeing him covetously. Damn it! It was unknown how many vulgarities Xiao Hua had uttered tonight, but these vulgarities were truly unable to express Xiao Hua's anger. This young master is only at the 4th level of the Qi refinement realm. Oh, that's not right. I'm just a little loose cultivator who's about to reach the 5th level of the Qi refinement realm. Unexpectedly, I was besieged by 6 Foundation establishment cultivators. If this were to spread to the cultivation world, would you guys be the laughing stock? Or would this young master's name be passed down through the ages? However, Xiao Hua also knew that tonight's matter would absolutely not spread out of Mount Hua Mountain. Right, Earth Fire. In the midst of Xiao Hua's dejection, he suddenly thought of Earth Fire. Of course, in Flame Forest Marsh, Xiao Hua had used 2 escape techniques. One of them was already known to be Earth Escape, so the other one was definitely Fire Escape. In these past several years on Xiaoyu Continent, Xiao Hua had only seen Earth Escape talismans, but he had never seen Fire Escape talismans. Moreover, even if there were, did these 6 Foundation establishment cultivators all have them? While thinking, Xiao Hua suddenly changed direction and fled towards the east of Mount Hua Mountain. Huh, what's this guy doing? Xiao Yu presumably also knew that Fu Yunbua and Xiao Mingwei, who were in the air above Mount Hua Mountain, would come to his aid. Therefore, he wasn't nervous and allowed Xiao Hua to fly towards the ground. However, when he saw Xiao Hua suddenly fly towards the east, where Kai Hong Feng was, he was somewhat astonished. Could it be that this brat has a trump card? Kai Hong Feng, who had the shallowest foundation, was somewhat afraid of this 4th level Qi refinement loose cultivator. He unconsciously braced himself and prepared to deal with him. It's here. At this moment, Xiao Hua's entire body was covered in flames. He was very sensitive towards fire attribute spiritual energy and found the location of earth fire extremely easily. With a sharp whistle, he rushed towards the passage of earth fire. Earth fire? Xiao Yu and the others weren't stupid. First, they saw Xiao Hua change direction. Then they saw earth fire appear in the east. Their hearts were already clear. This guy actually has a fire escape talisman. This was the same thought that came to their minds. Fellow Taoist Kai, quickly stop him. Xiao Yu hurriedly transmitted his voice. However, Kai Hongfeng's cultivation was originally the weakest among the 4. He didn't know any earth escape techniques and could only rely on earth escape talismans to chase after Xiao Hua. Naturally, he couldn't be as free as Xiao Yu and the others, and his speed was also much slower. By the time Kai Hongfeng caught up, Xiao Hua had already ignored the restrictions in the passage of earth fire and directly entered. Kai Hongfeng could only helplessly stop at the side and move away from the earth fire that was spewing out from the already broken restrictions. Chapter 1499. When Xie and the others saw that Kai Hongfeng didn't stop Xiaohua, they hurriedly transmitted, "Fellow Taoist Kai, quickly chase after him along the Earth Fire Tunnel. Even if he entered the Earth Fire, he will eventually come out. It's impossible for him to have many escape fire talismans." After that, the three of them stopped flying in the direction of the Earth Fire. Instead, they chased down the Earth Fire Tunnel. Xie was even more careful. He didn't care if his divine sense was burned again and swept it towards the Earth Fire. When he released his divine sense, Qieyu's face revealed a strange expression. When Xiaohua was at the bottom of Jinhua Mountain, Qieyu's divine sense clearly saw him. Even if he didn't release his divine sense, Qieiyu could still sense the flames on Xiaohua's body. However, now that Xiaohua had entered the Earth Fire, his flames were like a flood dragon entering the sea. There was no trace of him. How is this possible? Qieiyu was shocked. Even if he has escape fire talismans, he shouldn't be able to block Ai's divine sense. Quick, fellow Taoist Naiha, Xiaohua has disappeared. Quickly release your tracking magic treasure. Qieiyu hurriedly transmitted to Naiha. Impossible. He was shocked, but he didn't dare to be careless. He clapped his hands and summoned a magic treasure that looked like a disc. This was a magic treasure of the Seven Skills sect, called Seeking Immortal. He had brought it with him by accident. He never thought that he would be able to use it one day. With his early foundation establishment cultivation, Naiha couldn't use Seeking Immortal freely. Poof! He spat out a mouthful of qi and poured his magic power into the Seeking Immortal. The Seeking Immortal began to glow with a red light. He squinted his eyes and smiled. This guy is escaping down the tunnel of Earth Fire. Let's chase after him. Fellow Taoist Shi, you should also prepare the flywheel boat. If this guy really has many escape fire talismans, we can only chase after him into the Earth Fire. Qieiyu said to the Xuanyan school's disciple, Shi Muping. No problem, fellow Taoist Xie. Although Ai's flywheel boat can't fly as fast as outside the Earth Fire, it can still enter the Earth Fire. If we really can't, we can only use it. Shi Muping clapped his hands, and a small boat magic treasure appeared in his hands. Maybe not. We'll chase after him from 3 sides of the Earth Fire passageway. Do you think he won't come out from there? Helplessness laughed lightly. Qieiyu channeled his magic power and chased down. He had a very bad feeling in his heart. It seems the 3 masters of the Xianghua sect still underestimated this Xiaohua. 3 foundation establishment cultivators really might not be able to catch Xiaohua. Of course, this couldn't blame the 7 Skills sects. 7 Skills sect. Who is Xiaohua? An unknown loose cultivator with only a 4th layer qi refining cultivation. Even though they heard Kai Hongfeng's report and knew that Xiaohua had extraordinary flying speed, Kai Hongfeng was still able to catch up to Xiaohua. Sex Qieiyu, 7 Skills Sex Naiha, and Xuanyan School Shi Muping. These were 4 early-stage foundation establishment cultivators. There was no reason for them not to be able to catch him. Moreover, Xiaohua had already been stopped by the cultivators of Shihuang Town, and they didn't find any beads on him. Xiaohua might not be the person they were looking for. Therefore, the 3 of them thought that as long as they appeared and released their pressure, Xiaohua would immediately, obediently follow them back. They would casually ask him and use the soul-searching technique to take a look, and everything would be fine. Who would have thought that this Xiaohua was really a big fish that couldn't be caught? And the most infuriating thing was that Xiaohua actually used a escape fire talisman to escape. Qieiyu and the others had long been foundation establishment cultivators and had already practiced the 5 elements escape technique. Earth escape talismans, fire escape talismans, and even water escape talismans weren't difficult to find, but they had no use for them. Therefore, it didn't make any preparations. Unfortunately, the 5 elements escape technique could be used in all 5 elements, but it couldn't be used for a long time. Earth, wood, and water were fine. As long as the duration wasn't too long, there wouldn't be any major problems. However, fire and metal were different. The heat of fire and the sharpness of metal were the most harmful to the body. They could even damage one's cultivation. Unless it was absolutely necessary, no one would rashly try to use them. Therefore, in the earth fire, the 5 elements escape technique was inferior to the genuine escape fire talisman. It had to be said that Xiao Hua's escape into the earth fire had unintentionally hit their weak point. In the air above Mount Jinhua, Qiu Mingwei and Fu Yunbo waited for a moment. When they still didn't see anyone coming out from underground, they couldn't help but feel bewildered. They once again released their divine sense. Huh? There's no trace of him? Fu Yunbo was shocked and quickly asked, "Fellow Taoist Qiu, could it be that Xiao Hua has already escaped?" But 4 Foundation establishment cultivators surrounded him. How could a mere qi refining cultivator escape? Qiu Mingwei's divine sense was naturally several times stronger than Fu Yunbo's. After searching for a moment, a strange expression appeared on his face. He pointed to the east and said with a fake smile, "The Fu clan's alchemy technique is really amazing. Not only did they destroy the Liao clan of Mount Gong, they even became Xiao Hua's escape route." Earth fire? Escape fire talisman? Fu Yunbo suddenly realized and frowned. Even my Fu clan doesn't know the refining method of the escape fire talisman. Where did Xiao Hua get it from? Then he looked at Qiu Mingwei and said with an apologetic smile, "I already made it clear just now. The matter between the Liao clan and my Fu clan was just a misunderstanding. I hope fellow Taoist Qiu can understand." Qiu Mingwei had already made up his mind. He cupped his hands and said, "Even an upright official can't solve a family matter. Since it was done by Liao Mei, then it's the Liao clan's own matter. I'm afraid I can't do anything about it." Fellow Taoist Qiu's warm-hearted heart really makes I admire you. If fellow Taoist Qiu has time, why don't you stay at Mount Jinhua for a few days? Fu Yunbo said with a smile. Haha, no need. You have a lot of things to do at Mount Jinhua. You should hurry up and deal with them. Qiu Mingwei laughed and landed on the ground. He said, "Xianlan, this matter is over. You have seen what I have done. I have fulfilled my promise. Do you want to stay here, or do you want to leave with me?" Liao Xuanlan's face was miserable. She knew she couldn't do anything about it. She could only smile bitterly and said, "Since Senior has fulfilled your promise, then I can't go back on my words. Naturally, I will leave with Senior. Fellow Taoist Fu, you don't have any objections, right?" Xianlan is the daughter of an old friend. If she stays in my Fu clan, I will naturally take good care of her. If she leaves, I won't stop her in any way. Good. Then, fellow Taoist Fu, I will take my leave. Qiu Mingwei flew up and waved his hand. Liao Xuanlan's figure also quickly flew out of Mount Jinhua with him. Fu Yunbo stood in midair and looked at Qiu Mingwei's back for a long time. He didn't know what kind of expression he had in his eyes. Then he waved his hand and shouted, "Disciples of the inner courtyard divide into 2 teams. One team will search Mount Jinhua. The other team will go to the teleportation array. Along the way, look for Fu, Fu Zhu, and Fu Ho." Then he said, "This matter, everyone knows the severity of it. If you want to live, don't say a word." Although the group of talisman masters couldn't see the situation underground, they knew that Xiao Hua had probably escaped. The face of the 3 major sects was not something they could bear with their small lives. Even if Fu Yunbo didn't say anything, they would definitely keep their mouths shut. When the talisman masters' faces were filled with excitement, Fu Yunbo waved his hand and said, "Fu Feng, follow me to the forbidden area to take a look." Inside the earth fire, Xiao Hua's mood was incomparably excited. Just as he expected, the other escape technique was the fire escape technique. This was an extremely rare escape technique in the cultivation world. The earth fire around Xiao Hua was pervaded, but to Xiao Hua, it was like a fish swimming in water. He didn't feel the slightest bit of heat. What made Xiao Hua even happier was that with the improvement of the dragonization art and the refinement of the flames in his meridians, Xiao Hua's cultivation had already broken through to the 5th level of qi refining. Moreover, there were still many flames in Xiao Hua's meridians. The heavenly laws embodiment technique was still circulating in his body, and his cultivation was still rapidly increasing. However, for the sake of insurance, Xiao Hua didn't increase the speed of the fire escape technique. He was clear in his heart that this fire escape technique was escaping through the earth fire. Sooner or later, there would be an end. He couldn't escape through the earth fire into the core of the earth. He could only escape from a certain place. Only by using the flight talisman outside could he truly escape from Qiuyu and the others' pursuit. Flight talisman. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's heart was startled. Although he had a lot of flight talismans, their quality was limited. They couldn't be compared to a Foundation establishment cultivator's flight technique. He could only increase his cultivation as quickly as possible and strive to escape the range of the four people's divine sense before the flight talismans ran out. Only then would he have a chance to escape. While Xiao Hua was worried, Qiuyu and the others were also shocked. Fellow Taoist Nai, the earth fire seems to be getting bigger and bigger. Is Xiao Hua still inside? Fellow Taoist Xie, that Xiao Hua is still inside the earth fire. Moreover, his speed hasn't changed at all. I'm afraid he's exhausted his abilities. Nai smiled and said, however, I find it strange. This Xiao Hua is only a qi refining loose cultivator. Why is his magic power so long? Logically speaking, it should have dried up long ago. I'm afraid that the flames on his body are somewhat strange. Qiuyu nodded and said, the earth fire is getting bigger and bigger. We're chasing him outside, but we're getting further and further away from him. Fellow Taoist Shi, we'd better enter the earth fire and chase after him. We'll listen to fellow Taoist Xie's instructions. Shi Muping nodded and took out the small boat in his hand. He spat out a mouthful of vital essence, and the small boat enlarged, stopping in front of the three of them. Fellow Taoist Kai, come over too. Although Kai Hongfeng was old, his cultivation level was much lower than the three of them. He was quite far away from the three of them. When he heard Qiuyu's call, he had a flattered look on his face. The four of them boarded the flying boat. Shi Muping activated the flying boat and drove it into the earth fire. A red, misty brilliance enveloped the entire small boat. Fellow Taoists, I's magic power is limited. After a while, I'll still need your support. Shi Muping waited for the flying boat to travel through the earth fire and immediately reminded the three of them. Qiuyu knew that the flying boat consumed a lot of magic power in the earth fire. Shi Muping's words were true. He nodded and said, fellow Taoist Shi, please rest assured. We'll be ready to support you at any time. Chapter 1500. Fellow Taoist Shi, Xiao Hua is flying towards the north. Nai has suddenly reminded. North? What's so special about that? Shi musing changed direction and flew towards the north. The speed of the flywheel boat in the earth fire was clearly much faster than Xiao Hua's. In the time it took to eat a meal, it had already caught up. But at this moment, Shi musing smiled bitterly and said, fellow Taoist Xie, I have used up too much of my magic power. Please take control of the flywheel boat. Although the flywheel boat could catch up to Xiao Hua, it had to resist the heat of the earth fire. The magic power it consumed was also several times more than outside. This was also the reason why Shi Musing didn't use the flywheel boat unless it was absolutely necessary. All right, fellow Taoist Kai, get ready. Fellow Taoist Naiha is chasing Xiao Hua and can't leave. In a while, I will run out of magic power and you will take over. Qiuyu took the flywheel boat and said to Kai Hongfeng with a smile, since fellow Taoist Xie has signed, how can I dare to not follow? Kai Hongfeng cupped his hands and said, Nai has suddenly laughed and said, perhaps fellow Taoist Kai doesn't need to take action. The earth fire ahead has already reached the end. If Xiao Hua wants to escape, he can either go straight to the core of the earth, or... As expected, this guy rushed out of the earth fire and escaped towards the surface. Good. Qiuyu laughed and said, now that he's out of the earth fire, how can Xiao Hua escape? As for Xiao Hua, he already had no way out after seeing the earth fire unless he went deep into the core of the earth fire. He naturally knew that he couldn't go deeper than a Foundation establishment cultivator. The only way was to rush out. At this moment, he was already very far away from Jinhua Mountain. He didn't have Fu Yunbua's and Xiao Mingwei's divine senses, so the two probably didn't chase after him. Sigh, if only I knew flying techniques, that would be great. When Xiao Hua rushed out of the earth fire and entered the earth fire, he racked his brains to recall. Unfortunately, no matter how hard Xiao Hua racked his brains, he could only faintly feel that there were some spells he could use, but he couldn't remember which one specifically. Just as he was thinking, Xiao Hua's eyes lit up. He had rushed out of the earth fire. Xiao Hua hurriedly slapped the flying talisman he had prepared on his body and poured his magic power into it. His body, like a swallow, he flew towards the north. I'm afraid this guy is at his wit's end. Although Yu and the others were still some distance away from Xiao Hua inside the earth fire, when they saw Xiao Hua rush out of the ground, their hearts were as clear as a mirror. In the earth fire and underground, they might be somewhat stretched. Some spells or magic tools couldn't be used very smoothly. However, in midair, such a situation wouldn't exist. Moreover, their magic power was longer than Xiao Hua's, and they also had flying magic tools, so their flying speed was definitely faster than Xiao Hua's. Xiao Hua was forced to escape from the ground, so it was very easy for them to capture him. This bastard, there's a change in his flames. Kai Hongfeng had always wanted to make a contribution. Just now, he had taken the risk to release his spiritual force. Only then did he discover the difference in the flames on Xiao Hua's body. Seriously. Yu scanned with his spiritual sense and immediately said happily, Taoist, Nai can keep the magic treasure. Although this thing is good, it consumes too much magic power. That's great. Unfortunately, his magic power was indeed somewhat exhausted. He took advantage of the situation and withdrew it. He smiled and said, I need to rest for a moment. As he spoke, he sat down cross-legged and recovered his magic power, just like Shi Muping. In the distance, Xiao Hua suddenly felt two spiritual forces sweep past him. He knew that he had been locked onto by Yu and the others. He could only grit his teeth and didn't dare to hold back in the slightest. He poured all of his fifth-layer qi refining magic power into the flight talisman. Pop! With a light sound, the flight talisman on Xiao Hua's body immediately shattered. Xiao Hua's figure rapidly fell to the ground. Damn it, what's going on now? Xiao Hua was furious. He hurriedly took out another flight talisman and stuck it on his body again. What Xiao Hua didn't know was that right now, in his meridians, there was a boundless amount of fire-type spiritual energy circulating like a flood. And within this spiritual energy, there was an extremely large amount of fire essence flame crystals that had yet to be converted into spiritual energy of heaven and earth by the heavenly laws embodiment technique. These specks of fire unavoidably followed Xiao Hua's magic power and were sent into the flight talisman. Xiao Hua's flight talisman was nothing more than a yellow talisman. How could it withstand the massive amount of spiritual energy contained within those flames? As a result, before Xiao Hua's second flight talisman could land on his body, it immediately exploded again. Oh no, Xiao Hua thought to himself. I'm afraid I can only escape underground. As a result, he didn't control himself, and his entire body fell to the ground like a meteorite. Behind him, Yu and the others also frowned. This guy seems to have seen through our plans. He knows that the flight talisman is faster than the physical body, so he wants to escape underground again. If this guy wants to escape, then let him escape. Why is he still stopping in midair? Kai Hongfeng took the time to ask. Xiao Hua rapidly fell like a large rock. A feeling of weightlessness filled Xiao Hua's body and mind. This feeling was somewhat pleasurable and somewhat fearful, causing Xiao Hua to be slightly absent-minded. When he saw the mountain rock below him nearing, Xiao Hua casually activated the technique and prepared to use the earth escape technique. However, when he activated the technique, his entire body slowly stopped and slowly landed on the mountain rock. Moreover, after his body stopped, he suddenly floated up and flew forward very agilely. Flight technique. Xiaohua woke up from that moment of absent-mindedness. His hands didn't stop forming seals, and the magic power in his body also surged. Following his gradually recovered memory, he slowly displayed the flight technique. Strange. In the distance, Yu and the others had already rushed out of the earth fire. When they saw Xiaohua's actions through their divine senses, they were all puzzled. This guy, could it be that he changed his mind again? Xiaohua naturally changed his mind. As he recalled the flight technique, his flight went from slow and clumsy to fast and nimble. What made Xiaohua most excited was that he didn't need a flight talisman to fly. This was a magical ability that only Foundation establishment cultivators had. Seeing that Xiaohua's flying speed was getting faster and faster, Yu also immediately urged his magic power. The flywheel boat was like a bolt of lightning as it streaked across the sky and chased after Xiaohua. Looking at the distant Xiaohua again, he didn't know how many cycles the heavenly law embodiment technique had been circulating in his body. His entire meridians had completely expanded by more than 10 times due to the flood of fire spiritual energy. Moreover, following the expansion of his meridians, the flames that rushed out of his meridians were also absorbed back into his meridians. The flames around Xiaohua's body were also gradually extinguished. My Taoist robe and storage bag have been burned. Xiaohua waited for the flames on his body to extinguish before he suddenly realized. He hurriedly took out a new Taoist robe from his space and put it on. Fortunately, in order to deceive Fu Yunbua, Xiaohua put everything in his storage bag into his space, leaving only a few things. Aside from burning a few storage bags, Xiaohua didn't suffer any losses. The flames on Xiaohua's body disappeared. This guy, what happened to his body? Shi Muping, who had already recovered his magic power, stood up and asked curiously, "Fellow Taoist Shi, I'm afraid only Xiaohua himself knows about this." Kai Hongfeng smiled apologetically and said, "However, looking at Xiaohua's flying speed, it seems it's a bit faster than when we were at Shihuang Town. I'm afraid we'll have to use our full strength." Yu, who was controlling the flywheel ship, said in bewilderment, "This guy's cultivation is only at the 4th level of qi refining. How can his flying speed be comparable to our flying technique when we use 60% of our magic power?" 4th level of qi refining? Shi Muping frowned and said in astonishment, "Quickly use your divine sense to take a look. He's already at the 5th level of qi refining." What? 5th level of qi refining? Kai Hongfeng and Yu stared blankly. Even he opened his eyes. The three of them used their divine sense to scan the rapidly flying Xiaohua in front of them. It's not just the 5th level of qi refining. This guy, his magic power seems to be still increasing. He exclaimed, "I'm afraid it's because his cultivation increased that his flying speed increased. Xiaohua's current speed is already comparable to 60% of our magic power. If his cultivation increases again, I'm afraid we won't be able to catch up, right? How is this possible?" Kai Hongfeng felt that this was very absurd. He said in disbelief, "Although the 5th level of qi refining is the middle level of qi refining, but no matter what, it would take at least 2 years of cultivation to advance. Xiaohua, I'm afraid it has something to do with the flames from before. Could it be it has something to do with that thing?" Yu probed. "Who knows? Fellow Taoist Xie, let's take advantage of the fact that Xiaohua's flying speed can't compare to the flywheel ship and quickly capture him." He closed his eyes again and reminded, "Since he's in the air, not only the flywheel ship, even our magic tools can be used. Wouldn't it be like playing with him? I want to see, how long can this Xiaohua fly?" Che narrowed his eyes and said, "Where else can he fly to? His flying talisman can't handle the magic power consumption on his side. No matter how many flying talismans he has, he won't be able to outrun our flywheel ship and flying technique. Fellow Taoist Xie, let's follow our sect's orders and quickly capture Xiaohua." Fellow Taoist, she thinks too much. I was just curious. How could I dare to go against our sect's orders? I will activate the flywheel ship now. Yu smiled, and the flywheel ship's speed increased by a bit. However, things went beyond Yu and the others' expectations. At this time, Xiao Hua's meridians had swelled by 10 times, and there was a huge amount of fire attribute spiritual energy in his meridians. Under the effect of the heavenly law's embodiment technique, the spiritual energy was tempered by Xiao Hua's usual cultivation speed by 10 times. In the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Xiao Hua's cultivation had increased greatly. Although the distance between the flywheel ship and Xiao Hua had shortened, Xiao Hua's flying speed had increased by a bit. Fellow Taoist Shi, you control the flywheel ship. I'm afraid I have to use some tricks. Yu's divine sense had obviously discovered something wrong and turned around to say, and that's how it should be. Shi Muping nodded and said, Fellow Taoist Nai, I'm afraid we have to send out a message and have our sect disciples intercept him. If this guy escapes, we won't have any face left. Wait a moment. When I recover my magic power, I'll send out a voice transmission talisman. Nahi also nodded. We haven't used any tricks yet. How can you be so prepared? Yu smiled and clapped his hands. The net-like magic tool was taken out by him. Chapter 1501. Yu tossed the net magic tool in his hand and activated it with his divine sense. He directly flew in the direction of Xiao Hua's departure. However, just as Yu tossed out the magic tool, Kai Hongfeng cried out in alarm, Not good, fellow Taoists, that Xiao Hua's flying speed increased again. What? How is this possible? Naiha, who had just closed his eyes, opened them again. His divine sense spread out like a waterfall. This guy, his cultivation didn't increase at all? His speed, how can it increase again? Did he use some top-grade flying talisman? Fellow Taoist Naiha, if this guy, Xiao Hua, doesn't have a top-grade flying talisman, how can he fly at a speed comparable to 70% of our magic power? Yu urged the magic tool and reminded in a low voice. Don't say any more. I have already poured all my magic power into the flywheel boat. If Xiao Hua maintains this flying speed, we should be able to catch up with him after a meal. Fellow Taoist Xia, use the magic tool to attack. Fellow Taoist Kai, release your pressure and see if it can affect him. Shi Muping said somewhat impatiently. Yes, I will release my pressure. Kai Hongfeng nodded and released his pressure. Like a wave, it pressed towards a distant Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua, who was flying freely in the distance, didn't know the flustered and exasperated appearances of the 4 Foundation establishment cultivators on the flywheel boat behind him. He gradually familiarized himself with the flying technique he just recalled. As he familiarized himself with it, his flying speed became faster and faster. Not long after, he reached the fastest speed he could reach when using the flying talisman. Moreover, as Xiao Hua refined his fire-type spiritual energy and urged the flying technique with a huge amount of magic power, his flying speed was still slowly increasing. Ha, from the looks of it, it seems like I haven't reached my limit. Previously, this young master's flying speed was comparable to a Foundation establishment cultivator. If it increases a bit more, perhaps even 4 Foundation establishment cultivators won't be able to do anything to this young master. Xiao Hua's heart was blooming with joy. This is bad. Just as Xiao Hua was secretly rejoicing, a Foundation establishment cultivator's oppressive might press down from behind him. Although there was quite a distance between them, this was the difference in cultivation level. A heartfelt submission couldn't help but cause the flow of Xiao Hua's magic power to be somewhat sluggish. At the same time, following the arrival of the pressure, Yu's magic tool also caught up to Xiao Hua. That magic tool flashed in the air like a fishing net, enveloped Xiao Hua's meridians from afar, as if it wanted to imprison Xiao Hua's cultivation. 4 Foundation establishment stage cultivators. Just now, 2 of them brought out a little bit of skill and made Xiao Hua feel rather helpless. Coincidentally, at this moment, the fire essence flame crystals that Xiao Hua had absorbed had already completely merged with his bones. The red color had already spread to 40% of his bones. A fiery red brilliance flashed across his bones before the brilliance was extinguished. The red threads on his bones gradually disappeared, and his sparkling and translucent jade-like bones slowly regained their grayish-white appearance. It was exactly the same as before he had absorbed the fire essence flame crystals. What's his body's is suddenly his body his feel his body's is his suddenly is he is s. In the blink of an eye, his flying speed actually increased by more than 30%. This 30% difference in flying speed was precisely the difference between Xiaohua and an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator. It was also the difference between him and a flywheel boat flying magic tool. At this moment, Xiaohua suddenly increased his speed. Not only was Kai Hongfeng's pressure unable to catch up, but even Xie Yu's net-like magic tool missed. There's no mistake, right? Xie Yu, who was activating the magic tool, was completely stunned. He couldn't imagine the expression on his face. After a moment, he turned his head and asked, "Fellow Taoist Kai, my pressure seemed to have some effect just now, but..." Xiaohua's speed increased again. After all, pressure can't compare to divine sense and can't reach far. I'm afraid it won't have any effect. Kai Hongfeng's heart was filled with misery. That's right, Xiaohua. Half a year ago, he was still an ant under his feet, chased by him until he covered his head and fled like a rat. But now he can actually fly faster than me. Shanghua sect, Xuanyin school, and Qiqiao sect didn't need to fear Xiaohua's revenge. But what about their Qingyang Kai family? With Xiaohua's ghost-like flying technique, they didn't have a good way to stop him if he did something without anyone noticing. No need to say anything. I will send a message and have the senior brothers of the three sects come and help. At this time, Naya had also recovered his magic power. He stood up and said, "Even a middle foundation establishment senior brother can succeed. We don't need to think about face anymore." As he spoke, Naya clapped his hands and took out several sound-transmitting talismans. He said a few words into them and urged his magic power. The sound-transmitting talismans turned into several red lights and disappeared. I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist, Nai, to send a few more sound-transmitting talismans and have the disciples of the three sects block Xiaohua's path. This guy's flying speed is amazing, but his magic power is still only at the 5th layer of qi refining. A few disciples will be able to kill him. Xie Yu raised his voice. Fellow Taoist Xie, Xiaohua's speed is still increasing. Kai Hongfeng couldn't participate in the mobilization of the three great sects, so he had always been paying attention to Xiaohua. The distance between him and us is gradually increasing. With Kai Hongfeng's reminder, Qie Yu and the other two locked onto Xiaohua with their divine senses. Sure enough, Xiaohua's speed was still increasing, gradually increasing. The three couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. Shi Muping bitterly smiled and said, "We're using the flywheel boat, so our flying speed is already faster than normal. Even if we use our flying swords and use our bodies as one, we won't necessarily be faster than the flywheel boat. Although within the range of our divine senses, we can still use magic tools or flying swords, but Xiaohua is flying too fast. Magic tools might not be able to catch up to him. We can't just let him run away like that, right?" Kai Hongfeng said somewhat anxiously. "Fellow Taoist Kai, don't be impatient. Are we also thinking of a way?" Nai has said coldly, somewhat displeased. Yes, I was too impatient. Fellow Taoists, please think more. I will help pay attention to Xiaohua's movements." Kai Hongfeng was anxious, but he didn't dare to disobey the three. He could only look forward with a thoughtful expression. "Fellow Taoist Xie, I have a magic treasure of my sect with me. However, Ai's cultivation is shallow, so I can't use it at will. I will need your help." Naya thought for a moment and said softly. Xie Yu glanced at Shi Muping, who was controlling the flywheel boat, and nodded. "I'm afraid, fellow Taoist, she doesn't have the time for now. Fellow Taoist Kai, and I will help." And Naya didn't delay. He clapped his hand and took out a flying sword from his storage bag. That flying sword was different from others. There was a fist-sized bead on the handle. Naya handed it to Xie Yu and said, Fellow Taoist Xie, please inject your magic power into the bead on this flying sword. Okay. Xie Yu took the flying sword and poured his magic power into the bead without hesitation. As Xie Yu poured his magic power into the bead gradually became dark green. After Xie Yu poured his magic power, he handed the flying sword to Kai Hongfeng. Kai Hongfeng hesitated for a moment and also poured his magic power into the bead. Not long after, the bead became a bit translucent. Naiha took the flying sword and poured his magic power into the bead as well. Soon after, he spat a mouthful of blood essence into the flying sword. The flying sword flashed with a dark green brilliance and suddenly expanded. Then, Naiha formed a seal, and the flying sword pierced towards Xiao Hua's back at an incredible speed. How could it not be powerful when it gathered the magic power of 3 Foundation establishment cultivators? The flying sword quickly caught up to Xiao Hua's back. Under the urging of Naiha's divine sense, it accurately pierced down. But at this moment, Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out something like a spear tip from his storage bag. Although he didn't look back, as if he had divine sense, it just happened to stab the tip of the flying sword. With a ding sound, Helplessness flying sword was sent flying by Xiao Hua. It stabbed diagonally into the air, and Xiao Hua himself very cleverly borrowed the force to fly forward a large distance. Huh? Naya's face showed even more surprise. The sword seal in his hand moved again, urging the flying sword to fly down from the sky. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua didn't care at all. His whole body was like a fish in water. Every time he was able to dodge the flying sword at a critical moment. Moreover, there were many times when he could use the devil spear tip to borrow force. The two were locked in a stalemate for a moment. Naiha dejectedly withdrew the flying sword and said with a bitter smile, "Xiao Hua flew too fast, and the distance is extremely far. My divine sense can reach him, but my control of the flying sword isn't exquisite enough. I can only use 30% of its usual power. It's beyond my ability to deal with this guy. What do we do?" Kai Hongfeng asked again. "What do we do?" Naiha rolled his eyes and sneered. "I also want to ask, what do we do? Since fellow Kai knew that Xiao Hua met Qianqinghua, why didn't you tell us earlier? If so, fellow Naiha, didn't I also just know about your sex matter? If I knew earlier, how could I dare to delay?" Kai Hongfeng smiled apologetically. "AI, forget it, forget it," Cheyu hurriedly said. "Fellow Kai is only an elder of a cultivation family. Our 3 sects also wanted to keep it a secret that day. Fellow Kai also informed us in a timely manner when he found out later. Otherwise, we still wouldn't know that Xiao Hua is actually so important. Fellow Taoists, I'm afraid all our efforts will be in vain. That Xiao Hua's speed is still increasing." Shi Muping, who was controlling the flywheel boat, sighed and said, "If we fly for another hour, I'm afraid he'll leave the range of our divine sense. It won't be easy to find him then." AI, the other 3 all sighed. They've cultivated for so many years. Which one of them hasn't experienced many dangers and seen countless storms? But they've never been so aggrieved. He's obviously just a little loose cultivator at the 5th level of Qi refining. He's obviously an opponent that could be dealt with by whatever Thunder Palm, whatever 5 Thunder technique, whatever Great Confinement technique. But because they couldn't catch up, they couldn't use any of these magical powers. Even if they used flying magic tools, they still couldn't catch up. How could the 4 early-stage Foundation establishment cultivators endure this? Chapter 1502. The development of the situation was just as Shi Muping had predicted. Xiao Hua's speed did not stop increasing. Instead, it became even faster. In less than an hour, he had escaped from the range of the 4's divine sense. The 4 could no longer lock onto Xiao Hua. Fellow Taoists, what should we do? Now that things had reached this point, Cheyu was no longer anxious and spoke slowly. Naturally, we should chase him to the north." Kai Hongfeng said anxiously. Xiao Hua is really cunning. Just now, he repeatedly changed his method to escape. I'm afraid, once he escapes from our divine sense, he'll escape to another direction. If we blindly head north, we'll fall into his trap. Shimuping said thoughtfully while rubbing his chin. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but stopped. The four of them were all Foundation establishment cultivators and had used their divine sense for many years. If they couldn't lock on a Xiao Hua with their divine sense, they would be like ordinary people without eyes. No matter what, it was like a blind man touching an elephant. I think that since Xiao Hua wants to run for his life, he naturally has a guilty conscience. Qian Qing Hua's item is most likely on him. Yu thought for a moment and said, but this item belongs to the Imperial Thunder Sect. Xiao Hua is just a little fifth-layer qi refining cultivator, so he definitely has no use for it. Oh, I won't hide it from fellow Taoist Kai. Xiao Hua definitely can't use that item. The flame on his body shouldn't be what we're looking for. Since Xiao Hua can't use this item, then he must have sent it to the Imperial Thunder Sect. Although our three sects can't completely fall out with the Imperial Thunder Sect, we can send people around the Imperial Thunder Sect to investigate. We've already made some contributions by finding out about Xiao Hua's matter. Our sect disciples only need to follow the map, saving us a lot of effort. Ji sighed and echoed, fellow Taoist Chie's words are exactly what I was thinking. 4 Foundation establishment cultivators actually let a 5th-layer qi refining loose cultivator escape. It's really shameful. However, this is also the truth. It's undeniable that even if we continue to pursue like this, it won't work. How about this? I will continue to drive the ship to the north. Fellow Taoist Chia will send a message to the east. Fellow Taoist Nai will send a message to the west. Fellow Taoists, what do you think? Shimuping suddenly said. Great. Everyone applauded. Only Kai Hongfeng was a little embarrassed. He smiled apologetically and said, I wonder, how can I help? Hee. Fellow Kai has been out for a long time. It's better for you to return to Qingyang first. Wait for I to report to my master. Our Shanghua sect will remember fellow Kai's hard work here. Yu cupped his hands and said, Sigh. Kai Hongfeng sighed inwardly for no reason, but he didn't dare to show it on his face. He cupped his hands and said, That's good. Then I wish you the best. With that, he leaped into the air and prepared to fly away. But then he called out, Fellow Taoist Kai, Jinhua Mountain won't divulge this matter. I'm sure only fellow Taoist Kai of the Qingyang Kai clan knows about this, right? Kai Hongfeng turned his head and smiled bitterly. His eyes faced not also a face. After saying that, he turned around and flew away. Shimuping scoffed. If this fellow had told us earlier, we wouldn't have been so embarrassed. Let's go. Yu cupped his hands and said, Fellow Taoist Shi, it's been hard on you. We'll immediately find a disciple to help us. No matter, it's been hard on us. Fellow Taoist Xie is the same. Shimuping smiled, but Naiha stopped Xie and said with a smile, Fellow Taoist Xie, I's martial uncle is currently visiting an old friend in the east. If it's convenient, why don't you leave the east side to my 7 skills sect? Of course. Fellow Taoist Naiha, please. Yu didn't hesitate and cupped his hands and smiled. Thank you very much. Naiha smiled and flew out of the flywheel ship with Yu. They went their separate ways. Naiha's body moved like lightning and quickly flew a few miles to the east. He scanned with his divine sense and saw that there wasn't anyone nearby. He clapped his hand, and the plate-shaped magic treasure from before fell into his hand. He pointed his hand and saw a blurry red dot at the edge of the plate. It was slowly moving towards the east and was about to break free from the plate. This fellow is really fast at escaping. Naiha sneered and clapped his hand. He took out several communication talismans and activated them with his magic power. They all flew into the sky and flew in different directions. Then, Naiha's body wasn't slow either. He held the magic treasure in his hand and flew towards the east. If Naiha had his own methods, how could the other two not? Yu also flew for a while before stopping in the air. He clapped his hand and an exquisite talisman appeared in his hand. He spat out a mouthful of essence blood, and the talisman suddenly expanded into the shape of a crane. Cheyu chanted and pointed at the crane's eye. The crane let out a clear cry and circled around a few times before spreading its wings and flying towards the northeast. Damn it! Seeing the crane's searching talisman fly towards the northeast, Cheyu was about to stomp his feet in the air. Naiha actually knows how to play tricks. I let him take the lead. Then, he also threw a bunch of communication talismans in the air and chased after the crane's searching talisman. As for Shimuping, his gaze followed the three people flying away, and his face revealed a sneer. He, other than that country bumpkin Kai Hongfeng who doesn't know how to use his divine sense, which of us disciples of the three great sects doesn't know how to cultivate when we reach the foundation establishment stage? Cheyu and Naiha are pretending to be regretful. How could I not know? However, this is also good. Let's see whose methods are better. If the three sects are together, I'm afraid they will tear each other's faces. Xiaohua, Xiaohua. Do you think a fifth-layer Qi refining cultivator can escape from the hands of Foundation Establishment Stage cultivators? As he spoke, Shimuping clapped his hand on the flywheel boat, and a unique spell was cast. The flywheel boat immediately became twice as fast as before. Moreover, Shimuping didn't even need to guide it with his divine sense. The flywheel boat flew in the direction Xiao Hua flew in. What a pity. Xiao Hua thought he had stolen a trick and was actually able to escape from the hands of 4 Foundation Establishment Stage cultivators. However, he didn't know the real reason was that he had become the target of everyone's schemes. Fortunately, Xiao Hua, who was flying far ahead, didn't casually find a place to hide his cultivation base. Instead, he urged the magic power in his body. On one hand, he was refining the vast amount of fire attribute spiritual qi in his body. On the other hand, he was desperately urging his magic power, pushing the flight technique to the limit again and again. Are you kidding me? Naiha, who was the closest to Xiao Hua, looked at the formation plate in his hand with great vexation. Although Xiao Hua changed directions from time to time, he was still generally heading north. However, his tracks were always at the edge of Naiha's formation plate. Many times, he even disappeared. He should have escaped the detection range of the formation plate. Thinking about how he had already used nearly 90% of his magic power to urge the flight technique, Naiha knew how fast Xiao Hua was flying. However, Naiha still didn't dare to relax. He knew that Cheyu and Shimuping both had methods to chase in other directions. If he slacked off even a little, that thing would fall into the hands of Shanghua Zong and Xuanyan School. Naiha was like this. Cheyu and Shimuping were the same. The crane-searching talisman and the flywheel boat also flew and stopped, but they weren't shaken off by Xiaohua. After flying like this for several days, Cheyu and the others didn't catch up to Xiaohua. There were also no disciples of the 3 great sects blocking Xiaohua's path. However, Xiaohua's cultivation base had steadily entered the middle stage of the 5th layer of qi refining. However, although Xiaohua had refined an extremely large amount of spiritual qi, there was still an extremely large amount of fire attribute spiritual qi in his meridians. Xiaohua couldn't imagine how far his cultivation could break through if he could refine all the spiritual qi into true qi. However, at this moment, Xiaohua wasn't thinking about how to break through, but rather, he was too tired. That's right. From the time Xiaohua attacked the Fu clan in Jinhua Mountain, to the time when the Fu clan in Skyward Pavilion met with trouble, and then when the 3 great sects of cultivation chased after him, Xiaohua racked his brains to escape. Xiaohua's body and mind were both extremely exhausted, especially after his entire body absorbed the fire essence flame crystal. It was as if it had been tempered anew. It was indeed comfortable, but at the same time, it revealed a kind of indescribable sorrow. I should rest for a while. Xiaohua's figure landed on the foothills of a mountain, wanting to find a secret place to rest at this moment. In the northern direction, in a forest that was as green as the sea, the Empress, who was about 20 years old and wearing fiery red clothes, leisurely strolled with a drooping little girl. These two people seemed to be walking slowly, as if they were admiring the beautiful mountain scenery. However, in the blink of an eye, the distance of several dozen zhang was left behind by them. These two people seemed to be one with their surroundings, but also seemed to be completely separated. Everything around them was lively because of their existence, but they were also quiet because of everything around them. The gentle mountain breeze didn't blow the Empress bangs on her forehead, and the gurgling water also didn't wet the Empress bare feet under her skirt. Everything was so harmonious. Empress, the little girl lowered her head to look at the small marten in her hand, and said very sadly, "It seems this little thing hasn't made a sound all this time? Could it be?" Sighed Dyer, "Everything in the world has a life and death. Whether it is an autumn plant or a flying firefly, they all have a beginning and an end. This little thing, I'm afraid it has already reached the end of its life. This end may be the end in our eyes, but who knows, maybe this is the beginning of another kind?" The Empress' words were mysterious and profound, as if she was referring to something else. But how could Dyer understand? She frowned and said, "This servant only wants this little thing to live well. Seeing it have vitality, this servant is also happy. As for its other beginning, this servant doesn't want to think about it." The Empress felt that this was a good opportunity to teach, and was just about to open her mouth when she saw the small marten suddenly raise its head, a trace of excitement flashing through its eyes. It opened its mouth and very soundlessly shouted a few words. Dyer was pleasantly surprised and said loudly, "Empress, Empress, quickly, quickly, this little thing found its mother." A trace of pleasant surprise also flashed through the Empress' face. She waved her big sleeves and no longer strolled leisurely, but like a comet chasing after the moon, she directly shot towards the south. In the distance, Xiaohua had just found a secret place and was about to go into seclusion. Suddenly, he felt a pain in his heart, and a few mournful cries sounded in his heart. "Mother! Mother!" Chapter 1503. Hearing this heart-wrenching cry, Xiaohua was no longer able to meditate. He pushed open the hole that was just sealed and flew towards the source of the cry. In the distance, Yu and Shi Muping didn't say anything, but Nanai he stomped his feet. Damn it, that bastard clearly stopped and seemed to want to hide. But why did he come out again? Moreover, he's heading straight north? Could it be that he already discovered the divine sense mark on his body? Since Xiaohua ignored his exhaustion and flew north, he naturally used all his magic power and pushed his flying technique to the limit. Just run. Seeing that Xiaohua was about to disappear from the formation plate again, Yu secretly laughed. "We've already sent out a message. The martial brothers of our sect are rushing over from various teleportation formations. The further north you fly, the closer you'll be to the teleportation formation." In the blink of an eye, another day passed. Under the blood-red sunset, Xiaohua was hurrying on with his journey when he saw an unparalleled divine sense sweep past him from afar. It circled around Xiaohua's body and firmly locked onto him. Damn it, this divine sense is even stronger than Qian Xinghua's late-stage foundation establishment. Could it be that the seniors of the three sects personally made a move? Xiaohua thought to himself. Since there was a hungry wolf in front of him, Xiaohua clenched his teeth and activated his magic power, wanting to fly east. At this moment, from the emergence of the divine sense, a few more cries of "Mother" were transmitted. Xiaohua was somewhat hesitant. He really didn't know what the relationship between him and his mother was. Moreover, in front of him was clearly an opponent whose strength was beyond his reach. If he took advantage of this opportunity to escape, he might still have a chance. If he continued to fly forward, he would only be a moth to a flame. After hesitating for a moment, Xiaohua dejectedly stopped. He knew in his heart that the heart-wrenching feeling in his heart couldn't be wrong. Even if there was an opponent who could easily kill him in front of him, he definitely couldn't throw away this obsession and escape. Xiaohua once again activated his magic power. This time, he didn't use the heavenly law's embodiment technique. He only used the fifth layer of qi refinement and braced himself to fly forward. In the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, a fiery red figure rapidly flew over from the north. Xiaohua had just seen that figure when it landed in front of him. What kind of cultivation is this? Xiaohua was stunned for a moment. He blankly stopped in midair and looked at the Empress in fiery red clothes under the beautiful sunset glow. Her incomparable beauty and temperament. Mother! The small Martin in Dyer's hand suddenly sprang out of Dyer's hand. It struggled to shake its tail and rushed to Xiaohua's side. Unfortunately, it only flew halfway before the small Martin was exhausted and fell straight down from the sky. Ouch! Dyer cried out in alarm, but Xiaohua was even faster, flying towards little Martin. That heartwarming cry of mother resounded in his heart, causing him to involuntarily reply, "Little Huang, mother." Goldie fell straight to the ground. Its eyes were already closed, and the life force in its body was rapidly draining away. Xiaohuang. Xiaohua easily caught Xiaohuang. The coldness in his hand startled him. "Are you little Huang's mother?" The Empress didn't say anything. Dyer tilted her head and looked at Xiaohua in astonishment. "You seem to be only at the qi refinement realm. How could you be a divine transformation realm spirit beast?" Then Dyer turned her head and said, "Empress, this little thing's mother, why does it look like a man? What kind of spirit beast is he?" "Empress?" Xiaohua was stunned. He looked at the beautiful woman, then looked at the little girl whose cultivation was comparable to the peak of the qi refinement realm, and the naivety on her face. He bitterly smiled and didn't answer. Instead, he lowered his head and gently stroked Goldie's smooth fur. His eyes were filled with doting love. "Dyer, you're wrong. This person is a genuine human cultivator from the cultivation world. He's not some spirit beast transformation stage cultivator." The Empress was naturally able to see through Xiaohua's background and answered Dyer with a smile. But at this moment, the Empress frowned. She slightly raised her head and looked into the distance. She chuckled and said, "Little friend, we really met at the right time." Xiaohua smiled apologetically and said, "Junior was indeed being chased by a strong enemy, and when I heard Xiaohuang's call, I ran over to Nyang Nyang's side. If Nyang Nyang is convenient, then please help this junior. If not, then this junior will find another way out." "Empress." Dyer looked at little Huang with her big eyes and whispered, "Little Huang is so pitiful. He just saw his mother. You wouldn't, little friend." The Empress waved her hand and removed the divine sense mark on Xiaohua's body. She smiled and said, "You have someone else's divine sense mark on you. Even if you run to the ends of the earth, you will still be found." Then she waved her big sleeve again and flew towards the west. How did he disappear? As the Empress removed the divine sense mark on Xiaohua's body, Xiaohua's faint red dot on the formation plate immediately disappeared. Could it be a fellow Taoist from the Imperial Thunder Sect came to receive him? Similarly, Chieyu's crane-searching talisman and Shi Muping's flywheel boat also stopped in midair and didn't fly at all. The three people sighed almost at the same time. However, they couldn't stop and still flew towards the direction Xiaohua had just disappeared. The Empress's flight was naturally swift. In the time it took to eat a meal, she had already flown an unknown distance and landed on a foothill under the night sky. As soon as he landed, Xiaohua bowed and said, "This junior thanks the Empress for saving my life. No matter." The Empress smiled and said, "What's your name? Why are you this little thing's mother? Tell me." Xiaohua scratched his head and smiled apologetically. "I won't hide it from the Empress. This junior's name is Xiaohua, and I am a loose cultivator. Moreover, this junior has lost his memory long ago. I don't remember anything from the past. It's only because little Huang and this junior's minds are connected. Otherwise, this junior wouldn't dare to admit it." Is that so? You've already lost your memory. How do you know your name is Xiaohua? Dyer asked curiously. This junior's name was given by my previous sect. Xiaohua's heart moved, and he told the Empress about Shanghuoming. However, the Empress's expression didn't change in the slightest. This caused Xiaohua's thoughts to stop moving. Oh, so it's like that. The Empress looked at little Huang with some pity. It was as if little Huang's fate was more important than the lives of a few cultivators. She thought for a moment and said, "Poor little Huang. He came looking for you, but you still don't know his origins. If you don't worry, let this Empress take a look at your Naiwan palace and see what exactly is wrong." Xiaohua frowned. This matter was very dangerous. If the Empress had a trace of evil intent, he would be a fish on the chopping board. The Empress seemed to understand Xiaohua's thoughts and said with a smile, "This Empress will only casually take a look at your Naiwan palace. I definitely won't look at other places. This Empress only wants little Huang to have some comfort before he dies. Don't think too much." And okay, I asked the Empress to cast the spell. Xiaohua thought for a moment and nodded. Sit down cross-legged and don't resist. Otherwise, this Empress's spell won't work. The Empress said. After Xiaohua sat down cross-legged, the Empress urged her spiritual power, and a tricolored brilliance appeared on her fair right hand. The Empress slowly placed her right hand on Xiaohua's by Hui acupoint and pressed the brilliance into it. However, before the brilliance entered, the Empress' originally calm face suddenly showed a burst of astonishment. She quickly raised her hand, and the tricolored brilliance immediately popped out. After that, the Empress stood behind Xiaohua with an extremely complicated expression. She frowned and thought for a moment. Then, she flicked her finger and a strand of three-colored brilliance flashed through Xiaohua's Naiwan palace and seeped into his meridians. "Xiaohua, don't be nervous. This Empress..." "Oh, okay." The Empress's words had just left her mouth when the three-colored brilliance reached Xiaohua's Shanzhong acupoint. It immediately stopped and quickly retracted back into the Empress's hand. "Oh, how is it? Empress, did you find anything?" Xiaohua stood up and asked with an expectant look in his eyes. "Alas, this Empress's cultivation is limited. I really didn't see anything wrong with little friend's body," the Empress said with a smile and glanced at Dyer. Dyer originally wanted to speak, but when she saw the Empress's gaze, she could only shut her mouth. Since that's the case, this junior doesn't dare to force it. This junior is already used to it. Everything will come to light one day. This junior will wait, Xiaohua said with a smile. Then, Xiaohua looked at Xiao Huang in his hand and said sincerely, "Empress, although this junior can't remember the matter between Xiao Huang and me, this junior is undoubtedly Xiao Huang's relative. Therefore, the Empress returned Xiao Huang to this junior and saved this junior's life. This junior is endlessly grateful. This junior's cultivation is shallow and my ability is limited. However, if the Empress has something that is inconvenient for her to do, please instruct me." Dyer at the side pouted and said disdainfully, "Your cultivation is not as profound as I. What are you instructing me for?" The Empress scolded. "That's a small token of my appreciation. Don't say too much." Xiaohua's face was full of embarrassment. He said with a smile, it's fine. This junior's cultivation is shallow." The Empress looked at Xiaohua and patted her storage bag. She took out a dark green object and handed it over. She said, "Since you have such thoughts, how about this? When you cultivate to the middle stage of foundation establishment, take out this thing. It will bring you to find this Empress. This Empress indeed has a troublesome matter here that requires others to do." Xiaohua respectfully received it and put it in his sleeve. He said, "Many thanks for the Empress's trust. This junior will definitely find the Empress when the time comes." The Empress waved her hand and said, "This Empress just happened to see that there's a lot of fire spiritual energy in your meridians. If you refine it yourself, I'm afraid it will take a lot of time. How about this Empress help you?" Xiaohua's face showed gratitude. He bowed and said, "Many thanks for the Empress's good intentions." However, this junior has received a lot of grace from the Empress. It's better for this junior to do it himself. That's good too. Cultivating on your own will always have a solid foundation. The Empress looked at Xiao Huang again and sighed. Xiao Huang, this Empress is leaving. Dai also said goodbye with tears in her eyes. Chapter 1504. The Imperial Concubine and Dai flew slowly through the starry night sky. After a long time, Dai coughed and looked at the Imperial Concubine several times with her big black eyes. If you have something to say, just say it, the Empress said unhappily. You've been holding it in for so long. You still don't want to ask. The Empress is really wise. This servant can't compare to you in this life. Dai sighed and pretended to be mature. I don't know. Little Huang, is he okay now? Alas, I'm afraid his soul has already returned to the underworld. The Imperial Concubine also sighed and said in a low voice, even if Xiao Huang has found his mother, the injuries he suffered are very serious. Even this Imperial Concubine is helpless. So what can Xiao Hua do? Giving little Huang to him can also be considered as avoiding the separation of life and death. After coming to this Dawn Rain continent for several years, the Empress's heart, seems to have softened a lot. Dai said with a chuckle. You little girl, what are you saying? The Empress frowned and scolded. How can you be so impudent? This servant knows her mistake. This servant knows her mistake. Dai immediately apologized. But how was that the appearance of someone who knew her mistake? She blinked again and said with a smile, that Xiao Hua is really funny. He's obviously a male cultivator of the cultivation world, but little Huang still calls him mother. He's far worse than what this servant thought. Hearing this, the Empress also covered her mouth with a smile. That smile was so charming that even the bright moon paled in comparison. Of course, this Empress also thought it was a big yellow, who knew it was actually a big man. All right, Empress, look at that Xiao Hua's amnesia. Is there something wrong? Why don't you let this servant ask? Dai took the opportunity to ask again. Alas, although this Xiao Hua's origin is unknown, since little Huang calls him mother, he must have an extraordinary origin. The Empress looked up at the starry sky and sighed slightly. But this Empress still underestimated Xiao Hua. Huh? Why is that? Dai was puzzled. Isn't this guy just a 5th-level Qi refining cultivator? What kind of background could he have? I don't know about Xiao Hua's background, but I do know that Xiao Hua's Naiwan Palace has been sealed by someone using a divine ability. And this cultivator's cultivation, even I don't dare to rashly provoke him. How is this possible? Dyer covered her mouth in surprise and said in a low voice, he's just a so-called Qi refining cultivator. How could? That's right. I was also puzzled, so I probed his dantian. Who knew? His middle dantian had also been sealed by someone with a divine ability. Dyer exclaimed again. Xiao Hua is cultivating the middle dantian? That was the cultivation method used by the ancient so-called Qi practitioners when they first tried to gather Qi, right? Now, not only the 10,000 demon realm, but also the cultivation realm, they should have long been extinct, right? Dyer asked 3 questions in a row, and all of them were confirmed. The Empress smiled bitterly and shook her head. These are the mysteries of the desolate age, ancient legends. I can't be sure, so once I encountered this kind of restriction, I immediately withdrew the technique, lest I provoke the person who cast the restriction and bring disaster to me or Xiao Hua. Since Xiao Hua's middle dantian and Naiwan Palace have only been sealed by someone, and his cultivation is at the 5th level of Qi refining, then he must be cultivating the cultivation method used by the cultivation realm today. Since that person allowed Xiao Hua to freely cultivate, Xiao Hua shouldn't be in any trouble for the time being. But if I touched the restriction and that person found out, Xiao Hua would naturally be in trouble. Seeing Dai's puzzlement, the Empress explained, moreover, the restriction on Naiwan Palace and Middle Dantian is very mysterious. If I hadn't practiced a special divine ability, I wouldn't have been able to detect it at that time. In this cultivation realm, if a cultivator isn't at the tribulation passing stage, I'm afraid they also wouldn't be able to detect it. Then the Empress said, "There's a saying in the cultivation realm here. The ignorant are fearless." Xiao Hua being completely ignorant of his own situation is also a kind of happiness. Maybe he'll have some kind of opportunity in the future. Speaking up to here, the Empress smiled bitterly. Even she didn't dare to provoke someone. So how could Xiao Hua have any kind of opportunity? This servant understands. If the Empress didn't say anything, Xiao Hua would have seriously cultivated. If he knew he had such a powerful enemy, I'm afraid he wouldn't have any desire to improve. And that's more or less the case. Then this servant is even more puzzled. Dai asked again. Since Xiao Hua doesn't have any future prospects, why did the Empress still give him the spirit-transmitting talisman? Wouldn't it be a waste to leave it in his hands? Girl, you were still clear just now. How come you're confused now? The Empress pointed at Dai's forehead and said, "This Empress brought little Yellow to him and saved him from danger. If I don't give him a chance to repay me, his Tao heart will be shackled, and it might affect his cultivation." This servant said so. Empress, your heart is getting more and more meticulous. This trip to the Dawn Rain continent is really not in vain. Dyer said with a smile. The Dawn Rain continent is the human cultivation realm. Life, death, happiness, anger, sorrow, love, and hatred are indeed rare in my 10,000 demon realm. Traveling again is really beneficial to this Empress's cultivation. This Empress has already felt that the bottleneck that hasn't moved for hundreds of years is showing signs of loosening. The Empress smiled. "Congratulations, Empress." Dai immediately saluted in the air. That etiquette was different from all the etiquettes in the Dawn Rain continent. "Get up. You've worked hard this time. There will be benefits for you when you return." These words made Dai even happier. Her big eyes curved like crescent moons. As for Xiao Hua, after the Empress and Dyer left, he looked around and found a secluded place. He used the earth escape technique to escape into the ground. He found a place to hide and stopped. Then, he used the tip of the devil's spear to dig a hole the size of a person in the ground. Then, Xiao Hua sat cross-legged and raised Little Yellow in front of his eyes. At this time, Little Yellow was almost lifeless and motionless. Xiao Hua looked at it with heartache. His heart was torn for no reason. AI, if only I saw Little Yellow earlier. Xiao Hua secretly regretted. Then, his eyes fell on the vertical crack on Little Yellow's forehead. Little Yellow also has a crack here. It seems to be exactly the same as the one on my left hand. Could it be that there's something strange here? However, the crack on Little Yellow's forehead was the same as the crack on Xiao Hua's left hand. It was tightly closed, and he couldn't see what it was. That's right. In my space, the Iceworm King egg can slowly recover. I wonder if Little Yellow... Xiao Hua suddenly thought. He immediately waved his hand, and Little Yellow disappeared from his hand and was sent into the space. Sure enough, when Little Yellow entered the space, the light of tracing light shone on Little Yellow's body. After waiting for a while, Little Yellow's big tail swayed slightly, as if it was enjoying it. Good. Seeing this, Xiao Hua immediately clapped his hands and said with a smile, "That's good. Even if I can't cure you, as long as I can save your life, I won't be a mother in vain." Then, Xiao Hua took out the Mimi from the space and put it on his body. Then, he closed his eyes and concentrated on circulating the heavenly laws embodiment technique. He refined the fire attribute spiritual energy in his meridians one by one and slowly raised his cultivation. 1 day, 2 days, 1 month, 2 months. Time flew by quickly. In just a few days, the splendid sect, Xuanyin School, and Qiqiao sect sent a large number of disciples to the place where Xiao Hua disappeared to begin a search. Although the place where Xiao Hua went into seclusion was extremely far from the place where he disappeared, the 3 sects still sent many disciples to search this place. However, Xiao Hua didn't leak his magic energy and only immersed his mind into the space. On one hand, he comprehended the heavenly Tao, and on the other, he cultivated. This realm was something that even the splendid sects Sun Yunzi couldn't detect, let alone these foundation establishment cultivators. Xiao Hua disappeared under the eyes of the three sects. Of course, this matter was related to the reputation of the three sections. Just like what Xie said, anyone could know, but no one could say it out loud. Therefore, Xiao Hua's disappearance didn't cause any waves in the cultivation world of the country of Xi. And even if someone was thinking about it, it could only be a coincidence. They were thinking about when Xiao Hua would return the refining method of the Yunxing talisman. However, in addition to the coincidence, there was another person who no one could think of who was also thinking about Xiao Hua. Far outside of Jingpa City, in a secluded mountain stream, a large blood-colored fog shrouded the entire mountain stream. In the blood-colored fog, all the flowers and plants in the mountain stream withered, and countless small fish in the stream flipped their bellies. In the middle of the blood-colored fog, there was a small cave. Inside the cave, the blood-colored fog was even thicker. Several fist-sized moonstones couldn't penetrate the blood-colored fog and couldn't shine on the slightly fat human figure in the middle of the blood-colored fog. At this moment, the blood-colored fog above the human figure was like a drop of blood that was gradually dispersing. When the blood-colored fog gradually solidified around the human figure, it formed a circular space. The human figure began to gradually become clearer. This clarity was clearly separated from the blood-colored fog, and there was a gap of about half a foot in between. However, this human figure didn't seem to have any flesh and blood. Only white bones and a layer of shriveled skin were tightly connected together. Immediately after, the human figure stretched out its hand and picked up a golden mother-child spirit fruit from the ground in front of it. Looking at the thick golden runes on the mother-child spirit fruit, needless to say, it was the one that Xiao Hua sold in Yinyuan City. At this moment, this mother-child spirit fruit was somewhat different from before. Within the golden color, there was a faint sparkling and translucent brilliance. The skeleton-like hand of the human figure threw the mother-child spirit fruit into the air and then spat out a mouthful of life essence on the spirit fruit. The mother-child spirit fruit suddenly swelled. When it swelled to the size of a person, the skeleton-like hand drew a line at the bottom of the spirit fruit. A golden liquid that emitted a rich fragrance mixed with countless golden runes was poured into the human figure's Baihui acupoint. Immediately after, the skeleton-like human figure's mouth kept chanting and his hands kept making strange seals. From time to time, he would hit himself and the spirit fruit above his head. As the golden liquid flowed in, the human figure gradually filled up. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the mother-child spirit fruit in the air had completely shriveled up, leaving only a thin layer of fruit skin. The human figure's bones and skin also had a sense of density. However, things weren't over yet. The human figure then sat down cross-legged and made an even stranger seal. Endless spiritual energy between heaven and earth penetrated the blood mist and entered the human figure's limbs and bones. The human figure gradually emitted a faint golden brilliance. Chapter 1505. The pale golden brilliance continued to increase, forcing the blood-red fog to scatter and churn. After the time it took to eat a meal, the brilliance seemed to have reached its limit. With a sudden flash, it quickly converged, revealing the human figure within the pale golden brilliance. At this time, the human figure was no longer as withered as before. His limbs and body were full, just like an ordinary person. However, the head of this human figure was still blocked by some hazy brilliance, and the true face could not be seen clearly. Then, the human figure stood up, raised his head, and laughed. Countless years of hard work, always failed at the last step. No matter how much I racked my brains, I never thought that, when I was at the end of my rope, there would be a turn for the better. Li Zongbao, Li Zongbao. Have you ever thought that I would have such a day? Hee hee. Old man? Damn it, why do I always call myself that? Am I old? Then, the human figure chuckled and said to himself, I'm a handsome young man. How can it be me? Although Qing Fengmin's face was like the full moon, his face was red and his eyebrows were extremely thick. How could he be liked by female cultivators? Humph, speaking of Qing Fengmin, I am angry. A 5th-level Qi refining cultivator actually wanted to possess me. I was just sleeping in the cave of Yellow Flower Ridge, and I was woken up by this guy. But it's good. The price of waking me up is to become my meal. As the human figure spoke, the brilliance on his head gradually dissipated, gradually revealing his true face. It was none other than Shang Hua Ming's second disciple, Xiao Hua's second senior brother, Zhang Qing Xiao. Good, this 1,000-year-old mother and child spirit fruit is really powerful. It is actually the same as Qing Fengmin's memory, able to reshape the soul and erase all the filthy imprints, especially the Devil General. Damn it. What Devil General? This guy is just a magical beast. All traces of magical beasts in the Devil realm are all destroyed. Otherwise, although I am now a human, there is a devil imprint in my soul, and it is hard to guarantee that I will not be discovered by a powerful expert one day. Now, Qing Fengmin's memory has been merged with me, and my soul is also pure. I am really the same Zhang Qingxiao from before. Qing Fengmin has worked hard for hundreds of years. When you were working hard, did you not expect this result? Making a wedding dress for others for no reason. How pitiful. Io, damn it. Why am I still in a daze? The 1,000-year-old mother-child spirit fruit can reconstruct one's face when the devil seal is removed. If I don't get myself a gigolo now, I'm afraid I won't have the chance in the future. Zhang Qingxiao mumbled and immediately sat down cross-legged. Before the faint radiance on his face completely dissipated, he began to move. As expected, Zhang Qingxiao's fat, round, and slightly tanned face gradually became thinner. Although his face was still round, his skin was slowly becoming fairer, and his face became more handsome. Not long after, a handsome and confident pretty boy with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes appeared. Looking at his elegant temperament, as well as the unruly and worried look in his eyes, he was more suitable than Yun Jichong. In fact, Zhang Qingxiao's matter was not as simple as he mumbled. For Zhang Qingxiao, it was almost a narrow escape. That night, when Zhang Qingxiao and Gong Mingwei returned from 100 Herbs Gate, they encountered Sun Yunzi and the others killing the little white dragon. Zhang Qingxiao and Gong Mingwei were easily killed by Sun Yunzi's thunderpalm. Gong Mingwei was unlucky and lost his life at that time, but Zhang Qingxiao was lucky and didn't completely lose her life at that time. She only fell from a distance and fell into the cold pond. It was the bone-piercing cold water of the cold pond that froze some of the thunderpalm that was still wreaking havoc in Zhang Qingxiao's body. Otherwise, Zhang Qingxiao would have died in a moment. Of course, Zhang Qingxiao did not lose his life at that time, but he only had one breath left and was struggling at death's door. Coincidentally, the icy water of the cold pond had carried Zhang Qingxiao's body to the hidden cave that Xiao Hua had discovered earlier and stopped at the spot where the pond water had flowed back. This was also the reason why the 100 Herbs Gate and Xiao Xinrui were unable to find Zhang Qingxiao's body. Just like that, Zhang Qingxiao's body stayed in the cold pond water until Qing Fengmin's blood shadow escaped from 100 Zhang Peak and arrived at Yellow Flower Ridge. Qing Fengmin's soul was originally a demonic beast. He only possessed the body of a cultivator to cultivate. He couldn't possess a cultivator of too high a level, so he could only use the body of a low-level cultivator. This was why Qing Fengmin's cultivation was only at the 5th level of Qi refining. Moreover, the injured blood shadow was even weaker. It didn't even dare to possess an ordinary person and could only search for a dying cultivator or an ordinary person. Coincidentally, When Qing Fengmin passed by Yellow Flower Ridge, he very keenly found Zhang Qingxiao in the cave. Seeing Zhang Qingxiao's cultivation at the 11th level of qi refining and only a sliver of vitality, how could he not be like a fly that had seen blood? Without any hesitation, he rushed into Zhang Qingxiao's primordial spirit and wanted to possess her. In the process of possession, Qing Fengmin inevitably awakened Zhang Qingxiao's primordial spirit. Needless to say, the two primordial spirits fought to the death. It could be said to be a perilous situation. However, to Qing Fengmin's surprise, Shang Huaming's cultivation method had traces of the demonic race. His primordial spirit was incomparably firm. Although Zhang Qingxiao looked very frivolous on the surface, her heart was tenacious and she cared most about her family. Thinking back to when Xiao Hua showed a little bit of alchemy to Shang Huaming, Zhang Qingxiao warned Xiao Hua, "Shang Huaming and Yellow Flower Ridge are the places where I grew up. Master, senior brother, and junior sister are the people closest to me in this world. I will never let them get hurt, no matter who. If anyone dares to hurt them, even if I go to the 9 heavens, the 9 underworlds, the devil Dao, or the ghost Dao, I won't spare them." Therefore, although Zhang Qingxiao was on the verge of death, a trace of stubbornness in her heart had been persevering. At this time, when she saw that someone wanted to possess her, she naturally poured out her anger on Qing Fengmin's primordial spirit, devouring his primordial spirit until nothing was left. However, what Zhang Qingxiao obtained was not only Qing Fengmin's memories, but also the demonic marks in his primordial spirit. This kind of demonic mark was the brand in the souls of the demonic beasts and demons of the demonic realm. Qing Fengmin had gone through many possession attempts, and it was already very faint. He also didn't know where he got the information that the mother and child spirit fruit used to refine the embryonic breathing pill had another unknown effect. Therefore, after a period of recuperation, when his cultivation gradually recovered to about the 10th layer of the qi refining stage, he quietly sneaked out of Yellow Flower Ridge and went to the place Qing Fengmin had arranged to find the mother and child spirit fruit. Of course, the mother and child spirit fruit in Weiming Mountains had already been plucked by Xiao Hua. Zhang Qingxiao had no choice but to try his luck at the auction in Yinyuan City. It was also fate that the mother and child spirit fruit in Xiao Hua's space was actually 1,000 years old, which was really beyond Zhang Qingxiao's expectations. When the mother and child spirit fruit was in his hands, he made other preparations. It was only until today that his preparations were complete. Zhang Qingxiao held the idea of giving it a try and nervously gave it a try. As expected, she succeeded. Then, she was overjoyed and changed her face. Firstly, it was to not let her enemies know her identity. Secondly, naturally, Zhang Qingxiao waited for her face to be fixed before she stood up again. She took out a set of Taoist robes from the storage bag on the ground and put it on. She waved her hand in front of her, and a faint water ripple appeared out of thin air in front of Zhang Qingxiao. Zhang Qingxiao's entire body was reflected in the water ripple. Zhang Qingxiao looked up and down, left and right, front and back. Then, she flicked her sleeve with great satisfaction and removed the water ripple. Her face revealed a cold smile. Although this young master doesn't know which expert destroyed my Shang Huaming's nascent soul, there are only so many nascent soul experts in the country of Xi. This young master doesn't have such a high cultivation now, but it doesn't mean that there won't be in the future. You just wait and see. This young master has been reborn. You better wash your neck clean and wait to eat this young master's sword. Hee, Xiao Hua, my cute and mysterious little junior brother, is actually abandoned by the heavens. Granny, fortunately you met Li Zongbao. Otherwise, you would also be devoured by this old man. Ayo, that's not right. Although you haven't entered my Shang Huaming, you have cultivated 2 levels of Shang Huaming's cultivation method. But based on these 2 levels of cultivation method that are related to the demon realm, you won't be devoured, but I'm afraid you won't be able to escape death. In Since you have fallen to such a state, this old man probably can't suspect you anymore. I'm afraid that nascent soul is not someone you can summon. But my Shang Huoming's strange cultivation method, how did I end up in such a state? Senior sister, oh senior sister, you. Zhang Qingxiao's mind seemed to be a mess. She muttered to herself incoherently, as if she was thinking of the past and the future. Suddenly, her heart was in a mess. Forget it, forget it. Now that senior sister is together with Jiang Fan of the 100 Herbs Gate, you can be considered free and unfettered. This old man will let the 100 Herbs Gate go. But if senior sister feels wronged in the slightest, 100 Herbs Gate, oh, 100 Herbs Gate, you must kneel and kowtow to her. This old man had better cultivate. I just cultivated to the 12th level of qi refining. It's really a pity for this body of mine. Master, oh master, why are you so stingy? While thinking, Zhang Qingxiao sat down cross-legged again. But then, her brows relaxed, and she beamed with joy. Hee, I wonder who the mysterious cultivator who exchanged the mother-child spirit fruit for this old man is? That heavenly laws embodiment technique is the real deal. But it's said to be a cultivation method modified from the overseas celestial clan's cultivation method. It's not suitable for the mortals of the cultivation world at all. I wonder if that fellow is regretting it after spending so much effort to cultivate it and not gaining anything in the end. Of course, this old man is not lying. That is, of course, the complete cultivation method. In fact, this old man even added a lot of things to it. It's just that the token that I got together with the cultivation method looks similar to the good fate token, but this old man has been looking for it for so many years and still hasn't found its origin. It's just that Li Zongbao has benefited from it. That's right, there's also the Heaven's Relinquishment. This thing is extremely good. I can't waste it. When this old man has succeeded in cultivating it, I'll make good use of it. Chapter 1506. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Countless beads condensed from heaven and earth spiritual qi suddenly appeared in the air. The heaven and earth spiritual qi within a radius of several dozen li in the tranquil valley was instantly sucked dry, as if being pulled by a huge suction force. All of it poured into the mountain peak. In the cave inside the mountain peak, the bloody fog had already been forced to the four corners of the cave by the hurricane formed by the heaven and earth spiritual qi. Zhang Qingxiao was currently sitting cross-legged, his face expressionless. As the pressure on his body continued to increase, the heaven and earth spiritual qi poured in from the top of his head and was absorbed into the meridians in his body. The droplets slowly revolved around him, and from time to time, many of them merged into his body. After waiting for several days, the cave slowly regained its tranquility. The bloody fog once again spread towards the center of the cave, but this time there seemed to be an invisible restriction around Zhang Qingxiao's body, forcing the fog several zhang away. The bloody fog couldn't get close. Zhang Qingxiao's figure slightly moved, and he flew up from the ground. His face was intoxicated. Oh my, so foundation establishment is like this. Li Zongbao, oh Li Zongbao, I've also built my foundation. When will you be able to eat my sword as well? Ayo, that's not right. The one who gave me a sword seems to be Xiaohua. My little junior brother, if I stab him, wouldn't his soul scatter? Forget it. Counting with my fingers, it's been more than a year. From the 12th layer of qi refining to foundation establishment is really an extremely difficult step. If it weren't for the accumulation of Heaven's Forsaken, I wouldn't have been able to set foot into foundation establishment so easily. When Zhang Qingxiao thought of this, he suddenly frowned and said in a low voice, "This guy, why is he here again?" As he spoke, a crimson-red messaging talisman flew in and landed in front of Zhang Qingxiao. Zhang Qingxiao coldly glanced at it, then stretched out his hand. With a crisp crack, he crushed the messaging talisman and sent a message. "Zhihao, come in." After which, he looked around and saw the blood fog in the cave. With a wave of his large sleeve, the blood fog in the cave, as well as the fog outside the cave, were all sucked into his large sleeve. Not long after, the entire mountain stream was restored to its original beautiful scenery. He saw a cultivator in the 5th layer of Qi refining, about 20 years of age. He wore an ordinary Taoist robe, had delicate features, and a scholarly face. At this moment, the cultivator's face was filled with respect, and there was a hint of admiration in his eyes. He quickly walked in from outside, bowed his head, and said, "Junior Zhang Zhihao greets Your Excellency. This junior congratulates Your Excellency. Congratulations, Your Excellency." A strange expression appeared on Zhang Qingxiao's face. She quickly waved her hand and said, "My goodness, Zhang Zhihao, can you not be so rotten? My teeth are about to fall out. There are no outsiders here. You can speak as you please." Zhang Zhihao, he, Master, you're in that's... In the past, when we were struggling between life and death, we were rude. Now that Master's cultivation has improved, it's the beginning of our glory. This kind of etiquette is to show Master's majesty. It's only right. Fine, I can't win against you. Do as you wish, Zhang Qingxiao said, reaching out his hand from his sleeve. At this time, his hand was holding a fist-sized bead. This bead was blood red and translucent, emitting a bewitching color. It was condensed from the bloody fog from before. When Zhang Zhihao saw the blood bead, his eyes involuntarily showed a trace of greed. Zhang Qingxiao narrowed his eyes and looked at Zhang Zhihao's expression. With a wave of his hand, the blood bead flew in front of Zhang Zhihao and steadily stopped in front of him. "Master," Zhang Zhihao smiled apologetically. "Master, this is..." Zhang Qingxiao waved his hand and said, "Nothing else. I've made progress. I can't let you envy me for no reason. I have no use for this thing. You can have it." "Master, you really are..." Zhang Zhihao's face showed a shocked expression. "I thought..." "Ha ha ha." Zhang Qingxiao laughed and said, "It's exactly what you thought. Don't worry. You will be you in the future. You don't have to worry about me taking you back." "Master." Zhang Zhihao once again kowtowed in front of Zhang Qingxiao with tears flowing down his face. "This little one. Thanks, Master, for your grace." I knew you were different from Luo Jiesin. You were always unconvinced, but you didn't want to." Zhang Qingxiao sneered. I don't dare. Zhang Zhihao quickly kowtowed. This little one is really a small shrimp in Master's hands. From now on, you can stand up." Zhang Qingxiao smiled and said, "Right, you first put away the blood bead. I have something to ask you." Zhang Zhihao carefully received the blood bead and said respectfully, "Yes, this little one will listen to Master's instructions. Qing Fengmin is gone, but Tian Qi is still here. I feel that it's a pity to disband Tian Qi. Tell me, how can I use Tian Qi again?" Reporting to Master, Zhang Zhihao bowed and said, "In the past few years when Master is not around, this little one has been to Jingbo City and other strongholds of Tian Qi. This little one admires Master's foresight. Tian Qi is a loose organization of rogue cultivators. Although Master is no longer around, Tian Qi does not seem to have completely disbanded. When those rogue cultivators see this little one, it is like seeing Master. They even hope that this little one can support Tian Qi. Of course, this little one knows that Master is fine, so I did not dare to take over. Moreover, this little one has thought about it a lot in the past few years. I feel that Tian Qi's original purpose was to be blood food for Master. If it is disbanded, then so be it. It is not important. But now, Master can no longer use it, then it cannot be disbanded. Moreover, this little one feels that since Master wants to use Tian Qi again, there is no harm in using it in a big way." "Big way?" Zhang Qingxiao smiled and asked, "How to use it in a big way? Why don't you tell me?" Hee, Master, aren't you testing this little one? This little one does not believe that Master has not thought about it. Just say it." Zhang Qingxiao was displeased. Yes. Zhang Zhihao panicked and smiled apologetically. The reason why Tianqi's rogue cultivators joined Tianqi is because there is no cultivation sect to take them in. And Tianqi has developed for so many years. Not only do I have cultivation techniques from the cultivation world, but also master's cultivation techniques from the devil world. Master, why don't you directly establish a cultivation sect? I believe those rogue cultivators are willing to join Master's sect. In this way, Tianqi does not need to be disbanded anymore. Everything abandoned by the heavens can be reused. What you said is exactly what I want. Zhang Qingxiao smiled. All right, Master, you should stop calling yourself Lao Tzu in the future. I remember that you used to call yourself Lao Ai, which sounded very pleasing to the eye. But if Master wants to establish a sect in the future, it will always be Lao Tzu, which is impolite. Zhang Zhihao said. Damn it, Lao Tzu used to call himself I. Zhang Qingxiao muttered in his heart and nodded. Very good. I will be more careful in the future. Then he frowned and said, What is Tianqi's name in the future? You have some ability to play with words. Tell me about it. Heavenly Fiend's Sect. Zhang Zhihao said without hesitation. Presently, there are many fiendish cultivators in the Daybreak continent. This means that as long as they can cultivate, these cultivators will not care whether the cultivation method is from the fiend world or the cultivation world. It's just that these fiendish cultivators' cultivation methods are uneven and might not be able to achieve the great Tao. Since Master has a complete cultivation method, why not establish a fiendish sect and establish a fiendish sect? Recruit all these fiendish cultivators under your command? Furthermore, with these fiendish cultivators as examples, those rogue cultivators who don't have cultivation methods will also change their minds and switch to cultivating fiendish techniques. Great! Heavenly Fiend Sect. Zhang Qingxiao clapped and said, This sect is the sect master. Zhihao, you're the deputy sect master. Many thanks for Lord Sect Master's good intentions. But this lowly one's cultivation is shallow. Being the deputy sect master is not enough to convince the masses. Zhang Zhihao shook his head and said, Don't worry about this. Today, this sect master can change sects, so why can't you? When there's a chance, this sect master will help you erase the fiendish marks. Zhang Qingxiao laughed loudly and said, Many thanks, sect master. Zhang Zhihao's face showed surprise, and he knelt on the ground once more. No need to thank me. You and I are one. Zhang Qingxiao waved his hand and said, Heavenly Fiend Sect's matters are settled like this. This sect master will go and get started. Zhang Zhihao said in shock. How can this kind of thing be done by sect master personally? Of course, it's this lowly one who works for Ma Qian. No need. You still have your own matters. The matters on your side are more important than establishing the Heavenly Fiend Sect, Zhang Qingxiao said with a smile. This sect master only needs to cast a spell and find a few people to use it. Zhang Zhihao nodded when he heard and said, That's the only way. This lowly one will concentrate on cultivating. After refining that blood bead, I will be able to find a suitable position over there and be of greater use to my Heavenly Fiend Sect. Good. It's quiet here. You can refine the blood bead here. This sect master will also lend you a hand. Zhang Qingxiao nodded and said, Many thanks, sect master. Zhang Zhihao was overjoyed. He sat down cross-legged and raised the blood bead in the air. His hands formed a strange seal, and he hit the blood bead with his spiritual power. After a while, the blood bead gradually melted and turned into a pool of viscous blood-red liquid. It started from the top of Zhang Zhihao's head and wrapped around his entire body. Then, as Zhang Zhihao operated his cultivation method, it squirmed around his body as if boiling. Seeing that Zhang Zhihao's face was a little bitter, Zhang Qingxiao's expression did not change. His hand also formed a strange seal. This seal was definitely not Shang Huaming's cultivation method. As the seal was formed, the thick blood-red liquid around Zhang Zhihao gradually calmed down and thinned. It was slowly absorbed into Zhang Zhihao's body. Looking at Zhang Zhihao's appearance, Zhang Qingxiao knew that he was fine. Then, he turned around and flew up. His figure was a little clumsy at first, but it gradually became smooth, and he went straight to Jingbo City. A few days later, Zhang Zhihao slowly opened his eyes. He looked around the empty cave and slowly walked out. Looking at the secluded forest of Bird Cry Mountain, he smiled. Heavenly Fiend Sect. From now on, the demonic cultivators of the Dawn Rain continent can be righted. The sacrifices of my Devil Realm seniors for many years can be considered to have begun to reap the rewards. Chapter 1507. Mount Lamau was a famous mountain range in the west of the country of Shi. It wasn't as famous as the Sobbing Mountain Range or the Rising Dawn Mountain Range. Those two mountain ranges either had ferocious beasts or dangerous places that ordinary cultivators couldn't enter. The Mount Lamau was famous because of the Imperial Thunder Sect. The Imperial Thunder Sect was an anomaly in the cultivation world of the country of Shi. There weren't many disciples in the sect, less than 30% of the disciples in the splendid sect, Xuanyin School, or Qiqiao sect. However, the strength of the Imperial Thunder sect wasn't much weaker than the three great cultivation sects of the country of Shi. The reason for this was that the cultivation techniques passed down by the Imperial Thunder sect had very high requirements. Therefore, they were very strict when it came to accepting disciples. And it should be said that they were abnormally harsh. Of course, from a name of the Imperial Thunder sect, it could be seen that the cultivation techniques of the Imperial Thunder sect were of the thunder attribute. Finding suitable disciples for such a cultivation technique was probably even more difficult than finding Shanghuoming. Of course, Shanghuoming couldn't compare to the Imperial Thunder sect. Not to mention the Mount Lamau's paradise, the numerous gold core and nascent soul elders in the Imperial Thunder sect. The Imperial Thunder sect had many secret cultivation techniques that weren't of the thunder attribute. It was enough to throw Shanghuoming 100,000 miles away. The climate of the Mount Lamau was like spring all year round. The scenery was also extremely beautiful. Flowers flourished and green grass grew like a carpet. It was truly a fairyland. However, this fairyland was different from other places. One didn't need to carefully observe the purplish-red soil and rocks beneath one's feet. It was enough to arouse one's curiosity. This wasn't the only special place in the Mount Lamau. The most peculiar thing was that the Mount Lamau was rarely visited by people for hundreds or even thousands of years. Thinking about the guest pavilion of the Washing Flower sect and Xuanyin School, which one wasn't magnificent? Which one wasn't lively and extraordinary? Which one didn't have disciples specially assigned to welcome guests and interact with other sects? But looking at the Imperial Thunder sect, halfway up the mountain, next to the purplish-red mountain path, there was a shabby pavilion. It had long been worn out by the wind and rain. There was even a plaque that almost fell off. On it, the words Guest Pavilion were written majestically. Of course, these three words, one had to use 120% of one's eyesight to recognize them. Perhaps this was because the cultivators of the Imperial Thunder sect were mostly of the lightning attribute. All of them were aloof and didn't interact much with ordinary cultivators. That was why this place was so rare. However, these were all the tranquility of the past. Now, it was completely different. At this moment, there were quite a few young cultivators on the main path leading to the Layemo Mountains. Their faces were filled with excitement and a bit of longing. They were happily making their way up the mountain. They were either in groups of 3 or 5 or by themselves. Their cultivations varied as well. The weakest were at the second layer of Qi practitioner, while the strongest were at the 10th layer. However, the lower-level cultivators were very self-aware. They walked on the right side of the mountain path, while the higher-level cultivators walked on the left side of the mountain path with their heads held high. The shabby guest pavilion halfway up the mountain was even more bustling at this time. There were already quite a few handsome people who had stopped there. They stood there very obediently in an orderly manner. A handsome Peak Chi practitioner with a grave and stern face stood expressionlessly in the shabby guest pavilion. He wore a purple-red Taoist robe and was wearing an expressionless face. Although the guest pavilion was shabby because the young cultivator was standing there, It immediately gave birth to a kind of exuberant vitality. It gave birth to a kind of sharpness that made people unable to look down on it. Good heavens, this is a peak chi practitioner with half a foot in the Foundation establishment realm. He was actually sent here by the Imperial Thunder Sect to receive guests. This guest pavilion is probably the most shabbiest, and most one that no one dares to look down on. Of all the guest pavilions I have ever seen, I'm afraid. Think about the Xuanyin School's guest pavilion. It's oppressive wealth. Then think about the Huanhua Sect's guest pavilion. It's full of grandeur. However, who would dare to treat this small pavilion as a guest pavilion? This Imperial Thunder Sect is truly domineering. In front of the guest pavilion, the cultivators quietly stood there. Each of them had their own thoughts and expressions, but without exception, they were all respectful. Why hasn't he come yet after so long? The handsome cultivator standing there quietly frowned. His figure suddenly moved. Everyone's vision blurred slightly. The cultivator had already appeared in front of the guest pavilion. He turned his head to look at the Lei Mo mountains in the distance. The cultivator rubbed his hands together, and an arc of lightning appeared between his fingers. Then he flicked his fingers, and the arc of lightning suddenly flew away, flying into the distance. Lightning sound transmission? One of the cultivators in the crowd cried out in a low voice. What? This is lightning sound transmission? A sound transmission technique 10 times faster than the 1,000-mile sound transmission talisman? Another few people cried out in a low voice. Silence. The handsome cultivator swept a glance at them and scolded. It's only an insignificant sound transmission technique. What's there to be shocked about? Wait until you enter my Imperial Thunder Sect. There are many more high-level magic techniques than this. Yes, this disciple understands. A few tactful cultivators immediately bowed and saluted. The rest of the crowd came to their senses and regretted that they didn't immediately salute and speak to this senior brother of the Imperial Thunder Sect. At this moment, a slight sound of thunder came from above the Lei Mo mountains. A black dot flew from high up in the sky. It seemed to be moving very slowly, but in fact, it was flying very quickly. In the blink of an eye, the black turned into a huge flying boat. This flying boat was purple-red in color and was surrounded by tiny lightning bolts. Several children jumped off the boat. They were all in the 8th layer of chi refining. They bounced in front of a young cultivator and bowed. This disciple greets senior brother Kinluo. Get up. Why are you so slow? Kinluo waved his sleeves and said, It's just sending a few hundred cultivators up. How much trouble can it take? One of the children laughed and said, Senior brother Kinluo, my Imperial Thunder Sect hasn't been this lively for a long time. Many senior brothers and senior uncles have come out of seclusion. Those cultivators were surrounded by them before they could even get off the thunderboat. This disciple's status is low, so we didn't dare to say anything. We could only wait for them to leave before we dared to send those cultivators off the thunderboat. It's too late. These old bastards. Senior Uncle Chin's whereabouts are unknown, but they aren't in a hurry to find him. Why did they come out for a few ordinary cultivators? Didn't they just want to find a disciple? Our Imperial Thunder Sect's cultivation technique is very strict. It's good to have 1 in 10,000 disciples. The sect master hasn't even said anything yet. They look for an end, Kinluo said angrily. That's right. Those martial uncles have been searching for a long time, but they all shook their heads and got off the thunderboat while cursing. Disciples. The children were all talking at the same time. They don't know that disciples have been busy for several days. Just driving the thunderboat consumed a lot of magic power. Okay, you guys talk too much. This senior brother doesn't care. If you want to cry, find the senior uncles in Imperial Thunder Sect. Kinluo waved his hand and said. The group of children pouted and looked at each other. They felt very bored. Okay. You guys work harder. Once these few days are over, I'll talk to your senior brother general. That should be fine. Kinluo said angrily. Thank you, senior brother Kansas. The children were all happy. They turned around and rushed to the waiting cultivators. They shouted, Hurry up, hurry up. Our Imperial Thunder Sect's gate is already open to you. Let's see if you have any luck." The cultivators looked at the children who were about the same cultivation level as them and looked at each other. They obediently followed the instructions of the children and flew onto the thunder boat one by one. When the thunder boat was full, the children bowed to Kenluo and bid farewell. They then drove the thunder boat to fly up the Thunder Emo mountain range. After the thunder boat flew away, Kenluo sighed and turned to look at the scorching sun in the sky. He then looked in the distance and coldly said to himself, "The three major sects of cultivation are really hateful. Not only did they stop my senior Uncle Qinghua, they even stopped my Imperial Thunder Sect from recruiting disciples. If it was I would have already killed my way down the mountain. Will you be so arrogant?" Sure enough, a few hundred miles to the east of the Thunder Emo mountain range, a group of cultivators around the 5th level of Qi refining were flying together. They were flying in the air. A cultivator with a delicate face said with a smile, "Brother Emo, this time the Imperial Thunder Sect is recruiting disciples. We all have a chance. Just thinking about it makes me feel like I'm dreaming." Next to him, a cultivator who looked very mature and had a face full of hardships nodded. "That's right. The Imperial Thunder Sect's recruitment is famous in the entire country of Qi for being harsh. If you don't have a 10th level of Qi refining, a constitution of thunder, fire, or other rare constitutions, they'll never take a look at you." Who would have thought that this year there would be a change? Cultivators of all attributes and all levels of cultivation, no matter if they are male or female, can participate in the selection. This kind of opportunity has never been seen in thousands of years. Another male cultivator heard this and looked around. He whispered mysteriously, "I have heard some rumors about the Imperial Thunder Sect's recruitment this time." "Ah, is that so?" Brother Zheng, Senior Brother Mo's face was full of curiosity. He whispered, "Could it be that it's tailor-made for another cultivator? Or is there some other secret?" TCH, the disciple in front, immediately dismissed him. He waved his hand and said, "What kind of sect is the Imperial Thunder Sect? Why would they do such a dirty thing?" Brother Zhang is right. There's nothing dirty about it. Brother Zhang smiled. "Actually, this year's recruitment was supposed to be held 2 years ago. I heard from a reliable source that the lowest level of cultivation is the 8th level of Qi refining. At that time, I was very depressed. But who would have thought that the recruitment that year would end without any results? A good friend of mine. Hi, you all know her too. She's the young miss of the Misty Mountain. She originally signed up, but in the end, she didn't make it. That's why I heard from her that the Imperial Thunder Sect was recruiting disciples this year. That's why I hurriedly informed my friends." As he spoke, a cold and gloomy divine sense swept over them and locked onto them. Chapter 1508. These Qi condensation stage cultivators were naturally unable to detect the spiritual will. However, a wave of suppressive aura came from afar, pressing down on them like a mountain. Foundation Establishment Senior? All the cultivators felt their limbs go limp under the pressure and almost fell from the sky. Fortunately, the Foundation Establishment cultivator didn't seem to have any ill intentions. They were barely able to remain standing in the air and respectfully bowed as they waited for the cultivator to appear. Not long after, an early-stage Foundation Establishment cultivator slowly walked over. It was Qiaoyu from the Shanghua sect who chased after Xiaohua. Qiaoyu's face was gloomy and his eyes were cold. Seeing the embarrassed state of the cultivators, he didn't withdraw his pressure. Instead, he walked in front of them and scanned them with his divine sense. He said to a 5th-stage Qi refinement cultivator, "Who are you? Where did you come from? Where are you going?" Brother Zheng stuttered, "Junior, Zheng Mian of the Qi Mountain Zheng family is going to the Imperial Thunder Sect to become a disciple, to learn. With your cultivation, You want to enter the Imperial Thunder Sect? Yu sneered and scanned Zheng Mian with his divine sense. He then disappointedly asked another, "What about you?" Junior. Junior is from a Qinquan's Mo family. Mo Mei, also going to the Imperial Thunder Sect. Mo Mei, your name is really nice. Yu almost laughed out loud. Mo Mei didn't dare to correct him and only shrunk her neck back, looking very timidly at Yu. At this moment, Yu suddenly turned his head and looked at the other fifth stage Qi refining cultivator, surnamed John. Yu didn't say anything and suddenly reached out with his hand. That cultivator, surnamed Zhan's body flew up, following Yu's hand gesture. He simply didn't have the strength to fight back, as Yu grabbed his neck. "Say, Senior, save me." Cultivator Zhan's face turned red from Yu's grip. His two legs kicked in the air from time to time. At the same time, his two hands tightly grabbed Yu's hand and shook it with all his strength. Unfortunately, Yu's hand was like cast iron and didn't move. Mo Mei, Zheng Mian, and the others were shocked. They stood there at a loss, not knowing what to do. Then, Zheng Mian suddenly came to his senses and hurriedly bowed. "Senior, please spare our lives. Senior, please spare our lives. We are willing to give Senior everything in our storage bags." "That's right, we're all willing." Mo Mei and the others also came to their senses and hurriedly opened their storage bags. "Bullshit." With a shake of Yu's hand, Cultivator Zhan was thrown onto Zheng Mian's body. Zheng Mian hurriedly caught Cultivator Zhan. "Does I look like a robber?" Yu sneered, but this sneer concealed his deep disappointment. "Scram." Yu berated again. Yes, Junior will scram right now." Mo Mei and the others were still in a daze when Zheng Mian pulled them over, bowed deeply, and then flew away. Only after these people left did Yu let out a long sigh of relief. Looking at their backs, he said to himself, "Xiaohua, this bastard, where the hell did he hide?" Shanghua sect, Xuanyin school, and Qiqiao sect have been searching for who knows how long. But why can't they find even a trace of him? He couldn't have escaped thousands of miles away that day. If the Imperial Thunder Sect's elders took Xiao Huawei, why didn't the Imperial Thunder Sect retaliate against my Shanghua sect? Why would they lower their requirements to recruit disciples? Isn't this clearly showing that this opportunity was given to Xiaohua to climb the mountain? It's already been several days. I met who knows how many fifth-layer Qi refining cultivators. Every one of them was like a mouse seeing a cat when they saw I. I don't even need to look at their faces to know that it definitely isn't Xiaohua. How could Xiaohua be so afraid of I? While Yu was thinking, not far from him, there was a somewhat familiar figure hurriedly flying towards the Imperial Thunder Sect. "Xiaohua." Yu's eyes lit up. Without hesitation, he swept his divine sense. However, when his divine sense swept over that cultivator, Yu frowned with a puzzled expression. "Stop!" Yu shouted and released his pressure at the same time. "Io, say, Senior, you." That cultivator, who wasn't very tall, immediately trembled in the air. He bowed and respectfully looked at Yu. "Who are you? Where did you come from and where are you going?" Yu didn't relax his pressure at all and asked coldly, "Junior, Yun Jiechong from the Su Yinyan clan. I was ordered by my clan to go to the Imperial Thunder Sect to become a disciple." That cultivator replied very naturally. "Su Yinyan clan?" Yu blinked and said in a low voice, "I and the Yun clan are very close." "How come? I've never heard of your name before." "Ah, Senior. Senior, please bestow a name." "Junior travels less and can't compare to my brother Yun Jiechong." "I presume Senior knows my brother's name?" That cultivator quickly said, "I am Shanghua Sect's disciple Yu." Yu said, "I heard Xuanyin School's disciples tell I that your brother just entered Xuanyin School with a 10th layer Qi refining cultivation. Congratulations." "Xuanyin School?" That cultivator was stunned and said somewhat embarrassedly, "Senior Chia, please know that Yun Jiechong is Junior's clan brother. He only has a 9th layer Qi refining cultivation. Junior isn't from the main branch, and can't compare to my clan brother. Also, my clan brother didn't enter Xuanyan school, but Huanhua sect. Xiaohua. Che suddenly looked at that cultivator and called out. That cultivator didn't have any reaction and looked at Xieyu with some surprise. Then he looked around and said in a low voice, Senior, this is... Oh, it's nothing, Xieyu said with a smile. That's right. Your clan brother only entered Huanhua sect when he was at the 9th layer Qi refining stage. You're at the middle stage of the 7th layer Qi refining stage. How can you enter the Imperial Thunder sect? Are you confident? That cultivator smiled bitterly. I also don't think I'm confident. However, the clan head thinks it's just an opportunity. Maybe this is Junior's opportunity. That's why he asked Junior to come. That's right. Do you want to enter my Xianghua sect? Xieyu said with a smile. Ah, really? That cultivator's face was filled with pleasant surprise. He seemed to be enlightened and was about to kowtow and called Xieyu master. Who would have thought that, just as he was about to kneel down, a huge force would bind him firmly, causing him to be unable to move at all? Mas. That cultivator didn't even have time to say the word master before his mouth was filled with wind and he couldn't say a single word. Xieyu had already flown away and said while flying, My Xianghua sect disciples are all at the 10th layer Qi refining stage. You still need to cultivate for a few more years. This old man still has things to do. You should go to the Imperial Thunder sect. Senior. That cultivator's face was filled with disappointment. He chased after Xieyu for a while before resentfully stopping. Then he reluctantly flew towards Lei Imo mountain range. While flying, he glanced back several times, appearing extremely reluctant to part. Only after flying for several dozen li did that cultivator lower his head. He coldly snorted and said in a low voice, Xieyu, oh Xieyu, you want to play tricks with me? When I was at the 5th layer Qi refining stage, I wasn't afraid of you. Now that I'm at the 10th layer Qi refining stage, flying to Lei Imo mountain range from right in front of your eyes is as easy as blowing off dust. Why would I be afraid of you? Soon after, the cultivator's height slowly increased, and his very handsome face also slowly changed. In the end, he actually turned into Xiao Hua's appearance. Moreover, Xiao Hua's cultivation also increased bit by bit, all the way until he reached the 10th level of Qi refining before stopping. That's right, this cultivator was Xiao Hua, the Xiao Hua who just came out of seclusion underground. In the past 2 years, Xiao Hua didn't take a single step out of his seclusion place. On one hand, he was afraid of being found by the Xianghua sect, Xuanyan school, and Qiqiao sect. On the other hand, this was a rare opportunity for him to cultivate. Not only did he have the heavenly law embodiment technique, he also had the fire marrow flame crystal in his meridians. In these 2 years, Xiao Hua actually inconceivably cultivated from the middle of the 5th layer Qi refining stage all the way to the middle of the 10th layer Qi refining stage. Moreover, there was still a very small amount of fire marrow flame crystal in his meridians that hadn't been refined yet. If he could completely refine it, he could directly reach the 11th layer Qi refining stage. Xiao Hua naturally wanted to continue cultivating, but he had no choice but to come out of seclusion. This was because the restriction placed by Qian Qinghua in his meridians had already loosened. Qian Qinghua was also amazing. The restriction placed on the clear flower pill's medicinal power was also genuine. This restriction actually didn't loosen at all under the fire marrow flame crystal's flame and the dragon transformation art circulation. Only when Qian Qinghua's 2-year deadline was approaching did the restriction slowly start to loosen. After seeing the fire marrow flame crystal's fire attribute spiritual energy and thinking about Qian Qinghua's words, Xiao Hua didn't doubt that if the clear flower pill's medicinal power was completely released, his meridians wouldn't be able to withstand it. One had to know that Qian Qinghua's restriction was undamaged by the flame. With such a powerful restriction protecting the clear flower pill's medicinal power, how could the medicinal power be simple? Of course, the fire marrow flame crystal was an ancient cultivation item. Perhaps the clear flower pill couldn't compare. However, only 10% of the fire marrow flame crystal's fire attribute spiritual energy was used by Xiaohua. The rest was divided equally between Xiaohua's body, meridians, and bones. Thinking about the possibility of his meridians exploding and dying, Xiaohua trembled with fear and didn't hesitate to come out of seclusion. The news of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciple recruitment had spread throughout the entire country of Xi. Xiaohua only found out about it in the tea houses and wine shops very easily. If Qiu could guess it, how could Xiaohua not know? This opportunity was definitely created for him. Since the Imperial Thunder Sect did this, they must have their own difficulties. In other words, Qianhua Sect, Xuanyin School, and Qiqiao Sect would set up a defensive line around the Imperial Thunder Sect's mountain gate to prevent him from entering the Mount Lemao. However, Xiaohua naturally had his own methods. In these 2 years, whether it was Kai Zhuoxia's stealing the sky or the corresponding crossing the sea by deceiving the heavens, Xiaohua was extremely familiar with them. Now, not only could he change the appearance of his face, he could also barely shorten his height. With only cultivation, it was even simpler. Xiaohua didn't need to reduce his cultivation too much. Just the late stage of the 7th level of qi refining was enough to make Qiu think that he was Xiaohua. After all, using 2 years to go from the middle stage of the 5th level of qi refining to the late stage of the 7th level of qi refining was already inconceivable for a rogue cultivator. As for why Xiaohua didn't use his original cultivation at the late stage of the 10th level of qi refining, was there even a need to say it? Qiu had heard of the 9th level of qi refining, so how could a random 10th level qi refining cultivator come out of nowhere? Chapter 1509. Meanwhile, Xiaohua was slowly flying towards Lemao mountain range. While flying, he was slowly recovering his cultivation and slowly changing his face back to his original appearance. Seeing that Lemao mountain range was already in front of him, Xiaohua naturally saw the difference in the location of Imperial Thunder School. My goodness, why is the color of Lemao mountain range purplish-red? It's actually similar to Flame Forest Marsh's fiery red color. Could it be that there's also underground magma under Lemao mountain range? But Lemao mountain range's climate is mild, flowers and plants are everywhere, and green trees provide shade. It's not comparable to Flame Forest Marsh's Tong Mountain. Mother! While Xiaohua was secretly pondering, Xiaohuang's voice suddenly sounded in his heart. Xiaohuang, how are you these days? Xiaohua was now accustomed to speaking to Xiaohuang attentively. Hearing Xiaohuang's voice, his face showed surprise and asked. 2 years ago, Goldie was already on the verge of death, but it was also strange. Ever since Xiaohua sent Goldie into the space, under the illumination of the reverse light, not only did Goldie not die as the Empress expected, but it also gradually recovered its vitality. Of course, this kind of recovery was very slow. In these 2 years, Xiaohuang was only able to preserve his life. If he wanted to return to his previous speed, it was still too far away. Mother! Very good. Here, it's really warm. Xiaohuang was somewhat gasping for breath. He couldn't even speak clearly. However, his tone was filled with endless joy. It seemed that as long as he was together with Xiaohua, it was the happiest thing in the world. And your body is still weak. You should cultivate first, Xiaohua said with heartache. Yes, mother. Xiaohuang was very obedient. He lay on his back, and, as if he was basking in the sun, he instinctively breathed in reverse light. Right, mother? Little Black, did you find it? Xiaohuang suddenly asked. Xiaohua scratched his head and said awkwardly, No, not yet, and Xiaohuang was like a child. He had incomparable trust in his mother. He only felt that his mother was the greatest person in this world. If Xiaohua said there was no, then there was no. He also believed that his mother must be painstakingly searching for it. Xiaohuang, it's not that mother doesn't want to look for its mother. I can't remember what Little Black is. Could it be a little black sable like you? Xiao Hua was speechless. Although Goldie's life was saved, it needed time to recover. Moreover, Goldie was only a little beast. It only knew that Little Black was Little Black, but it couldn't say what Little Black was. Xiao Hua even tried to ask Goldie about his past. Unfortunately, Goldie was involved in Xiao Hua's past and knew many things about Xiao Hua, but Goldie couldn't express it. I can only assume that Little Yellow is a taciturn person, Xiao Hua thought, and raised his left hand. Looking at the crack in his left hand, he thought, good, Little Yellow's forehead has an eye. Could it be that this young master's left hand also has an eye? But why was Little Yellow able to open his eyes, but yours truly couldn't even feel anything at all? Hee, what's the use of having an eye on your hand? However, this young master's past experience, I'm really looking forward to it. Xiao Hua's eyes looked at the Lei Imo mountain range in front of him. Indeed, in 2 years from the 5th level of Qi refining. No, it should be from the middle of the 4th level of Qi refining all the way to the late of the 10th level of Qi refining. This kind of thing should be extremely rare in the cultivation world. According to common sense, from the 4th level of Qi refining to the 10th level of Qi refining, it should take close to 30 years. Even if it was a peerless talent, such as Li Zongbao, it would still take close to 10 years of hard work. How could it be heard that someone could achieve it in 2 years? Especially 2 years ago, he was still an 18 years old loose cultivator? Kai Zhuixia said that there were bottlenecks in the middle of every level. I didn't encounter any of them. It seems that this can only happen when one's level is high enough and their magic power is insufficient. In that case, I was already at the peak of Qi refining before. But that so-called Empress, didn't she say that she also didn't find any abnormalities in I? She's a cultivator with great magical powers. Come to think of it. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua frowned again. That heavenly laws embodiment technique seems to have some problems. This technique is admittedly a genuine Qi refining technique, but the essence seems to be leaning towards body cultivation. Moreover, in some key areas, there are traces of blood shadow technique from time to time. If it wasn't for this young master being proficient in the blood shadow technique, this young master would really have fallen for it. Could it be that mysterious cultivator who wanted to obtain the mother-child spirit fruit is someone from the devil realm? It's extremely possible. Didn't the Forsaken Heaven sect have 3 initiators? Qing Feng Min and Luo Jiasen are 2. Then what about the 3rd person? If it wasn't that little blood shadow on the Thousand Zhang Peak, then it must be someone else. You actually took this young master's spirit fruit and even plotted against this young master. If this young master has the chance in the future, this young master will definitely make you suffer a little. Forget it. The higher my cultivation, the more certain this young master will be to take revenge on the 100 Herbs Gate. Damn it, Jiang Jiantong, just you wait. Xiao Hua's eyes flashed with a trace of severity. Xiao Hua. Just as Xiao Hua was venting his anger, someone behind him suddenly cried out in surprise. When Xiao Hua heard this, he couldn't help but feel his hair stand on end. He didn't dare to look back, and urged his flight technique to flee towards the Thunder Imo mountain range. However, that person continued to say, "Oh, sorry, fellow Taoist. I recognized the wrong person." Xiao Hua stared blankly, inwardly saying, "This voice seems very familiar. Is it a female cultivator that this young master knows?" Shue. Xiao Hua suddenly understood. Before he turned his head, he recalled the set of magic tools that Ling Jingyi maliciously gave him in the space. "Fellow Taoist Shue, long time no see. How are you now?" Xiao Hua turned his head and asked very warmly with a smile on his face. Xiao Hua. Shue's shock was even greater than before. Previously, she only felt that Xiao Hua's tall and thin figure was somewhat familiar. However, when she saw that Xiao Hua's cultivation was at the 10th layer of Qi refining, she immediately realized that she recognized the wrong person. However, now that she really saw Xiao Hua turn around, she confirmed that this late-stage 10th layer Qi refining cultivator was really the same Xiao Hua who was at the 4th layer of Qi refining. Her eyes were wide open. One hand covered her cherry lips, while the other hand was slightly raised and placed on her towering and violently shaking chest. What? We haven't seen each other for only 2 years, and fellow Taoist, Shui has already forgotten I? Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes, as if he was looking at Shui's shocked face. He also seemed to be looking at Shui's snow-white chest, and asked with interest. No. Shui realized her rudeness. She took a deep breath, bit her lips, and bowed respectfully. How could I forget fellow Taoist Xiao? Didn't I just greet fellow Taoist Xiao from afar? That's good. Xiao Hua looked at Shui, who was still at the 8th level of Qi refining, and said with a nod, fellow Taoist Shui, since you've come here, do you also want to enter the Imperial Thunder Sect? Of course. Shui took a deep breath again, and a trace of strangeness flashed through her eyes. She said with a smile, those who came to the Imperial Thunder Sect these past few days, other than to enter the Imperial Thunder Sect and learn martial arts, what else can they do? MHM. Xiao Hua nodded noncommittally. That, fellow Taoist Xiao. Shui hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice, previously, my Misty Mountain. If there was anything we did wrong, I hope fellow Taoist Xiao can forgive us. Fellow Taoist Shui. What do you mean? Xiao Hua's eyes turned, and he said with a smile, when I's cultivation fell, fellow Taoist Shui helped me. Now that I's cultivation has completely recovered, fellow Taoist Shui also contributed. I don't even have enough time to thank you. So how can I forgive you? This, Shui's face was a bit unnatural as she said in a low voice, I was talking about Misty Mountain. Haha, so fellow Taoist Shui was talking about your uncle. Xiao Hua suddenly understood. Senior Ling thought highly of me and gave me a fake magic tool refined by the Misty Mountain, so of course I am grateful. What's there to forgive? Shui sighed and said, fellow Taoist Xiao, with your cultivation, you really hit it for a few days ago. If my Misty Mountain has done anything inappropriate, I hope that fellow Taoist Xiao can take into account the fact that you and this poor Taoist are connected by incense, and incense. Forgive us. Fellow Taoist Shui's words are getting more and more outrageous. I am really confused. Xiao Hua pretended not to know. It's nothing. Shui raised her head and said with a smile, with fellow Taoist Xiao's cultivation, you definitely have a deep background. Moreover, you came to Sky Thunder Peak this time with full confidence, so the identity of a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. I'm afraid you can't run away. I will greet fellow Taoist Xiao in advance. If fellow Taoist Xiao becomes a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect in the future, it will be too late to talk. Xiao Huan naturally understood what Shui was talking about, but he had already made up his mind not to return the magic tool. So how could he admit it? However, after hearing Shui's words, his heart was moved. He came to the Thunder Mountain Range with the intention of returning the bead to the Imperial Thunder Sect, and then asked the seniors of the Imperial Thunder Sect to refine the medicinal efficacy of the clear flower pill. He never thought about joining the Imperial Thunder Sect. At this time, he couldn't help but think, that's right, this young master is originally a loose cultivator. I've already cultivated the Heavenly Laws embodiment technique to the 10th layer of the Qi refining realm. With 2 more layers, the remaining flame in my meridians and the medicinal efficacy of the clear flower pill will be enough to cultivate to the peak of the Qi refining realm. At that time, wouldn't this young master have no more techniques to cultivate? Joining the Imperial Thunder Sect is actually a good path. Fellow Taoist Xiao. Seeing Xiao Hua deep in thought, Shui was a little nervous. She looked around and saw many cultivators rushing over and called out. Xiao Hua raised his head and said with a smile, some things are not good to be too obvious. I don't think I'm a meddlesome person, and I presume Senior Ling is also like this. If some things Senior Ling can forget, and fellow Taoist Shui can never mention it again. I think that would be the best. Chapter 15:10. Hearing Xiao Hua's words, Shui Shui's heart calmed down. She stared deeply at Xiao Hua and cupped her hands. Fellow Taoist Xiao is so broad-minded. I really admire you. Is that so? Xiao Hua smiled. Why didn't I feel it myself? Shui Shui didn't know that Xiao Hua had already understood Ling Jingyi's thoughts. She was just afraid that Xiao Hua would pursue this matter in the future, so she apologized first to pave the way. As for the specific reason, she wouldn't be stupid enough to say it now. So, she smiled and said, when I saw fellow Taoist Xiao that day, I felt that fellow Taoist was unusual. I always felt that fellow Taoist temperament didn't match fellow Taoist cultivation. Now it seems that's the case. Ha! Xiao Hua laughed, looked up at the sky, and said with a smile, today is probably the last day of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciple recruitment. Let's go up the mountain quickly, don't delay the time. Shui Shui nodded and looked around again. Just a moment ago, it was still a bit lively, but now it was already the last moment. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please. Shui Shui waved her hand and said, flying on Sky Thunder Peak is not allowed. We have to walk. Okay, fellow Taoist Shui, please. Xiao Hua smiled and descended with Shui Shui, following a few cultivators who were in a hurry up the Sky Thunder Peak. At this time, the sun had already set. In front of the Imperial Thunder Sect's guest pavilion, the handsome Imperial Thunder Sect disciple, Qin Luo, was still standing with his hands behind his back. However, at this time, he was squinting his eyes and looking at the red sun that was about to fall on the Thunder Mountain Range in the west. The red light of the setting sun shone on his handsome face, making him look even more spirited. Xiao Hua came to the guest pavilion at this moment. Just like the others, Xiao Hua was also rather surprised when he saw the shabby state of the Imperial Thunder Sect's guest pavilion. However, he immediately understood something. A mountain is not high, but it has an immortal. A water is not deep, but it has a dragon. Compared to absolute strength, all the decorations, all the prosperity, were insignificant. Therefore, although Huanhua sect was famous and had many disciples, compared to the Imperial Thunder sect, it was still a lot worse. Rinsing Flower sect, Xiao Hua thought to himself. He wondered if Fairy Hong Xia had already joined the Rinsing Flower sect. Fellow Taoist Xiao? Shui Shui stood at the side and whispered, let's stand over there. Xiao Hua stared blankly. Following Shui Shui's finger, he saw more than a dozen cultivators in the 8th layer of aura refining and above, standing far away from the guest pavilion. Around him were several dozen cultivators in the 4th or 5th layer of aura refining. There were even a few in the 2nd layer of aura refining. These cultivators had some reverence in their eyes. Standing next to Xiao Hua and Shui Shui, they were very reserved. Damn it, I accidentally became a high-level cultivator too. Xiao Hua doesn't have the awareness of a high-level cultivator. He smacks his lips and walks towards those 8th layer aura refining cultivators. Greetings, fellow Taoist. Xiao Hua chuckles as he walks over and greets those cultivators. Unexpectedly, those cultivators are also somewhat afraid. They only cupped their hands and saluted, but didn't say anything to Xiao Hua, making him feel very bored. Seeing Xiao Hua's somewhat gloomy expression, Shui Shui chuckles and says, fellow Taoist Xiao, all the high-level cultivators have already come here a few days ago. Fellow Taoist is about to reach the 11th layer of aura refining. You're the bane of these 8th and 9th layer aura refining cultivators. Think about it, the Imperial Thunder sect has a limited number of disciples. You're their strongest opponent, so why wouldn't they avoid you? Oh, Xiao Hua touches his nose and nods, saying, I still can't get used to it. His words are a bit vague, so Shui Shui doesn't ask much. Like the other cultivators, she stands quietly and waits for the Imperial Thunder sect's disciple to make arrangements. Xiao Hua's thoughts are naturally somewhat different from theirs. He looks at Kenluo, thinks for a moment, and walks over. Fellow Taoist Xiao. Shui hurriedly calls out in a low voice. Xiao Hua turns his head and slightly nods at her, but his footsteps don't stop. However, before Xiao Hua can approach Kenluo, an invisible force blocks Xiao Hua in front of him, preventing him from approaching. If there's nothing else, stay there first. Just as Xiao Hua wants to speak, he hears Kenluo say coldly, although your cultivation is the highest here, but you still don't have the qualifications to talk to me. If you want to take advantage of I here, you'd better save your effort. Xiao Hua opens his mouth, not knowing what to say. If I were you, I'd obediently stand there and wait. Today is the last day of the disciple recruitment. You just have to endure for another hour, and my Imperial Thunder Sect's disciple will come to take you up the mountain. If you continue to be noisy, be careful I don't kick you out of the mountain. Kenluo doesn't use sound transmission to say these words. Instead, he clearly says them. Everyone in the surroundings of the guest pavilion can hear it. Everyone's gazes are a bit gloating, a bit mocking, and a bit sympathetic. These words make Xiao Hua blush. He flings his sleeves and turns around. He doesn't say a word and just stands there quietly. Kenluo is very annoyed. Since the Imperial Thunder Sect announced the start of the disciple recruitment, today is already the 5th day. In these 5 days, who knows how many extremely discerning cultivators have shown off in front of him. He originally thought that these people would have some kind of relationship with Qian Xinghua, but after interacting with them for a long time, it turns out that they're all flatterers. They are far from what he imagined, so later on, he has to deal with them half coldly and half passionately. And now, it is already the last moment, and the Imperial Thunder Sect still hasn't obtained the information they want. How can Kenluo not be annoyed? Seeing Xiao Hua come forward, he immediately stops him. After saying some cold words, he sends his divine sense down the mountain. He wants to see if there are any more cultivators on the gradually desolate mountain path. Alas, I can't blame Kenluo, and I can't blame Xiao Hua either, because those who can think of showing off in front of Kenluo are all 10th layer aura refining cultivators, even 11th layer aura refining cultivators. They are all people who have the possibility of winning the disciple selection. Only these people have some lively thoughts, and only these people think they are qualified to speak a few more words with the Imperial Thunder School's disciples. And Xiao Hua just happens to be the same as these disciples. Seeing that dusk is coming, Kenluo sighs softly. His gaze swept over the group of low-level cultivators again. He stretches out his hand, but before he can use thunder sound transmission, he hears a buzzing sound in the air. It is the sound of the thunderboat flying over. When the thunderboat lands, Kenluo waves his hand and yells, "Everyone get on!" Then he takes the lead and flies to the front of the thunderboat. Good heavens, this flying boat isn't just ordinarily cool. Xiao Hua flies onto the thunderboat, while looking at the flickering lightning around the boat with envy. Fellow Taoist Xiao, this thunderboat is unique to the Imperial Thunder Sect. Don't be fooled by its size. Its flying speed is absolutely first class. Only the 7 possibilities sect's flowing cloud flying boat can compete with this thunderboat. Hearing this, Xiao Hua's heart is moved. He says with a smile, "I've heard that the Imperial Thunder Sect's thunder escape technique is world famous. Is this thunderboat also born from the thunder escape technique?" At this moment, Shui and Xiao Hua have already landed on the thunderboat. The thunderboat is empty, with only a few dozen people standing on it. In the center of the thunderboat is a protrusion of about 10 feet. This protrusion is a depression. In the depression, there's a faint blue magic formation. At this moment, it is faintly shining. Occasionally, there are small arcs of lightning flying out from it. Around this protrusion, there are more than 10 children around the age of 10. Their faces are somewhat tired and they are scattered around. Hearing Xiao Hua's words, Shui points with her finger and says in a low voice, "The Imperial Thunder Sect's thunder escape technique is their secret technique. Ordinary people can't see it. As for whether this thunderbolt is born from the thunder escape technique, I don't know. However, Misty Mountain and a cultivator from the Imperial Thunder sect have some old ties. I have also heard about this thunderbolt before. Fellow Taoist, do you see the depression in the thunderbolt? Shue Shue says in a low voice. Yes, I see it. Xiao Hua nods and says, that is probably the driving formation of the thunderbolt, right? Yes, fellow Taoist Xiao is right. Shue Shue gives a thumbs up and says in a low voice. However, the driving formation of the Imperial Thunder sect is different from others. This driving formation is a lightning pool. Lightning pool? Xiao Hua is shocked. He looks at the magic formation in disbelief and asks, is that lightning inside? I only said that the driving formation is a lightning pool. I didn't say that this is a lightning pool. Shue Shue says with a smile. The lightning pool on this thunderbolt is the simplest one. I'm afraid that it is driven by lightning spirit stones. It can only be used for flying, so it can't be considered a real lightning pool. Then, she lowers her voice and says mysteriously, it is said that there's a real lightning pool in the Thunder sect's Thunder Mo Mountains. It provides spiritual power for all the magic formations and restrictions of the Imperial Thunder sect. This is exactly because of the lightning pool. In every generation of the Imperial Thunder sect disciples, there are always a few outstanding ones. They can almost beat the outstanding disciples of the three major sects. Speaking of the lightning pool, Xiao Hua naturally thinks of the bead that Qian Qinghua asked him to bring. That bead might be called the lightning bead. Maybe it is in the lightning pool. While Xiao Hua and Shue Shue are talking, all the cultivators have come up. A slightly older boy comes up to report to Qin Luo. Qin Luo releases his spiritual sense and scans the bottom of the mountain for the last time. Then he waves his hand and says, let's go. There are no more cultivators at the bottom of the mountain. Yes, senior brother Qin Luo. The boy bows and returns. With an order, 8 out of the 10 boys stand up and stand around the lightning pool. Then, one of the disciples makes a hand sign and hits a corner of the lightning pool with spiritual power. Then, the other 7 disciples also make different hand signs, but they hit different places. Wong Wong. As the hand signs are hit, the lightning pool actually becomes dull and the blue lightning inside gradually increases. As the Wong Wong sound becomes louder, the thunderbolt slowly rises. When it is in the air, it immediately turns around and flies in the direction of sky, Thunder Peak like lightning. Chapter 15:11. Xuanyan Sect's Xuanyan Mountain had a towering mountain range surrounded by many other mountains. There were countless exotic flowers and grasses on this mountain peak, and all kinds of rare birds and beasts were leisurely strolling around the foothills. Many auspicious clouds were like brocades that covered many parts of the mountain range, making it seem boundless and ethereal. Occasionally, a flying crane would appear, making the mountain peak seem like a fairyland. This mountain range was Xuanyan Sect's main peak, Gold Mountain Range. Under the cover of the auspicious clouds, there were many majestic palaces scattered all over the mountain range. At the highest point, where the auspicious clouds were the densest, there was a majestic palace. It was the Wild Goose Spirit Palace of Xuanyan Cult. At this time, on the high platform of Yinling Palace, Fairy Ingjua's face was as cold as ice. She sat on a gorgeous warm jade chair, and her eyes were like lightning, coldly looking below the high platform. Below the high platform, there were more than 10 cultivators sitting majestically. They all looked down as if they were meditating. Elder Yi Xian, about the Thunder Pearl, is there still no progress? Fairy Ingjua looked below the platform for a long time, sighed softly, and asked coldly. A thin young man with a Midyuanian cultivation raised his face slightly, moved his body, and cupped his hands. Yes, I will let you know about the Thunder Pearl. My Xuanyan sect knew about it too late. Shanghua sect got it first, but it was taken by Imperial Thunder sects Qian Qinghua. I know all of this. 2 years have passed. Where is Qian Qinghua? Where is the Thunder Pearl? Just because I didn't ask doesn't mean I don't care about it. Fairy Ingwa sneered. Don't you know what the Thunder Pearl is? If Imperial Thunder Sect gets it, I'm afraid there will be some twists and turns, right? Huh. Elder Ishian smiled apologetically. Of course I know, otherwise my Xuanyin sect wouldn't have intervened. But there is no news of Qian Qinghua, and the whereabouts of the Thunder Pearl are unknown. On that day, a cultivator saw a vagrant cultivator named Xiao Hua meet Qian Qinghua. However, this Xiao Hua mysteriously disappeared while being chased by our Three Sects Foundation establishment disciples. I presume that this Thunder Pearl was taken by this Xiao Hua. The problem is that the Imperial Thunder Sect has now opened their doors to accept disciples. They want to use this opportunity to avoid the joint blockade of our three sects and let this Xiao Hua go up the mountain. This also showed that the one who took Xiao Hua away was not a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Then who is it? Today is the last day for the Imperial Thunder Sect to accept disciples up the mountain. According to the disciples of my sect in the Layemo mountain range, they didn't find that rogue cultivator up the mountain. Haha, I'm afraid that the Imperial Thunder Sect will have work for nothing. If the Imperial Thunder Sect worked for nothing, wouldn't our three sects also work for nothing? Fairy Ingwa sneered and said, a few Foundation establishment disciples can't even catch a single chi refining loose cultivator. What do you want me to say to you? It's really getting worse with each generation. Elder Ishuan's face didn't change and said, according to what I know, this Xiao Hua is probably a trick of Qian Qinghua. How can he give such a precious Thunder Pearl to a chi refining loose cultivator? As for Qian Qinghua himself, it is said that he was seriously injured by the Qianhua sect's disciples. If he is not in seclusion somewhere to recuperate, he will die. I don't know if the life spirit tablet of Qian Qinghua in the Imperial Thunder Sect has been damaged. In that case, send more people to watch this matter. It's only been 2 years. If Qian Qinghua wants to recover, it will take at least 8 to 10 years. This Thunder Pearl must not be allowed to be taken up to the sky, Thunder Peak, smoothly. Yes, I will follow the sect master's order. Elder Ishuan said with his hands folded. Zhenren Ishuan said it. Elder Jieqiong, how is the matter on your side? Fairy Ingwa turned and asked. A young and beautiful female cultivator next to Elder Ishuan was slightly surprised and bowed and said, I don't know what the sect master is talking about. Fairy Ingwa frowned and said unhappily, Fairy Jieqiong, although cultivation is important, but the important affairs of the sect must also be taken care of. Otherwise, how can my Xuanyin sect survive for tens of thousands of years in the country of Xi? Yes, I understand. Although Fairy Jieqiong didn't agree, she still nodded and said, I have been practicing a kind of magic art for nearly 10 years. Now I have gradually made some progress, so I don't have to worry about it. Well, I'm asking about your hunting seedlings. How is it going? Fairy Ingwa said softly. Oh, Sect Master is talking about that matter. Fairy Jieqiong heard, and said with some disdain, hunting seedlings is just an attempt, but the situation is not good. While speaking, Fairy Jieqiong waved her sleeve, and in mid-air, a huge mirror appeared out of thin air. Inside the mirror, there was really a cold ice cave. There was a thick layer of ice inside the cave, and from the top of the cave, there were hundreds of huge ice thorns hanging down. On the ice layer, there were more than 10 young cultivators of different ages, all of them sitting cross-legged. Their bodies were constantly trembling, and there was a faint ferocious look on their faces. Sect Master, this hunting seedlings of our sect has 99 disciples participating. As early as when the fire marrow flame crystal was integrated into the meridians, there were 62 disciples who exploded due to the violent fire spiritual energy of the fire marrow flame crystal. Not only their meridians, but their entire bodies were torn apart. Is it because too much of the fire marrow flame crystal was integrated? Fairy Ingwa frowned slightly and asked, Sect Master, The fire marrow flame crystal has been divided into 99 portions by me. It really can't be divided anymore. Fairy Jiqiong replied, I think it's not about the amount of fire spiritual energy in the fire marrow flame crystal. The key is the spiritual energy in the fire marrow flame crystal. It's different from the fire spiritual energy that we usually absorb into our bodies. Fairy Ingjua's expression was indifferent, and she did not comment. Fairy Jiqiong did not pay attention to Fairy Ingjua's reaction and continued. Also, the physique of those disciples, or their meridians, cannot be reconciled with the fire spiritual energy in the fire marrow flame crystal. Once the fire spiritual energy entered their bodies, before they could use the cultivation method that was taught previously, their meridians would be torn apart, and the ice spiritual energy in the cold cave did not have any effect at all. Then what about these disciples? Fairy Ingjua looked at the mirror. Among the remaining 37 disciples, other than the 3 disciples on the left, the other 34 disciples are a little special. These disciples were sent by the sect master to participate. I don't know why nothing happened to them. What's so special about those 3 disciples? Fairy Ingjua was slightly stunned and asked curiously. These 3 disciples are called Pan Hao, Feng Linbua, and Xiao Mao. Before the first 2 enter my Xuanyin school, they were outstanding disciples of a declining body cultivation sect. Xiao Mao is nothing special. He entered my Xuanyin school since he was young, but his aptitude is not good. So he signed up this time, and his aptitude is not good. Fairy Ingjua sneered. Not cultivating fast does not mean that his aptitude is not good. This Xiao Mao was able to survive when the others exploded and died. How can his aptitude be bad? Yes, I understand. Fairy Jiqiong nodded and then slightly opened her mouth, wanting to say something but hesitated. Is there a problem? Fairy Ingjua saw clearly and asked. Yes, I want to ask these 34 disciples that the sect master brought, what's so special about them? Fairy Jiqiong replied. I want to answer you first. You tell me what's the difference between them and the others. Then I'll embarrass myself. Fairy Jiqiong thought for a moment and said, These 34 disciples seem to have traces of body cultivation, but they are not body cultivation. Also, their meridians seem to have cultivated our sect's secret technique, so they are much wider than the other disciples. And what Elder Jiqiong said is about right. Looking at Fairy Jiqiong's eyes, Fairy Ingjua smiled and said, Do you remember the dragon blood and dragon meat that I brought back 5 years ago? It seems I have some impression of it. Fairy Jiqiong's face was blank. Looking at Fairy Jiqiong's vague expression, Fairy Ingjua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She laughed and said, These 34 disciples used dragon blood to mold their body and dragon meat to replenish their energy. So it's like this. Fairy Jiqiong cupped her hands and said, Sect Master's foresight is far beyond what I can achieve. While they were talking, on the mirror on the upper right hand, a disciple's body suddenly lay on the ice surface. His 4 limbs twitched violently, and his face showed an extremely painful expression. Not good. Quickly, seeing this, Fairy Jiqiong immediately knew that something was wrong. She waved her sleeves and was about to make a move, but a pong sound was heard and that disciple's body exploded. His flesh and blood turned into a blood mist and scattered in all directions. At this moment, a dark red brilliance flashed, and that blood mist was blocked by this brilliance. Then the whole brilliance rolled up and collected all the blood mist. It drilled into the ground and disappeared. On the ground and on the surrounding people, there was not a single trace of blood left. This, Fairy Ingjua's somewhat excited mood, was instantly extinguished by cold water. She looked at the mirror in a daze. Sect Master, I think that there is no shortcut in the path of cultivation. You can only rely on your own diligence and hard work to steadily improve your cultivation. This kind of hasty method, I'm afraid there is no hope. That secret technique that uses fire essence flame crystal, I'm afraid it's useless. Before Fairy Jiqiong's words fell, on the mirror, Another disciple exploded and died. Fairy Ingjua shook her head slightly and said, "At the beginning of the ancient era, there were no cultivators in the world. Most of them were wild spirits. Their bodies were tyrannical and their abilities were natural. And this fire essence flame crystal was what they used to refine their bodies and meridians. Also, this secret technique that uses fire essence flame crystal was obtained from an extremely reliable person. I think it's useful." Fairy Ingjua smiled and said, "This hasty method can be considered hasty for now. In the future, I'm afraid it will be used normally. So, Elder Jietxiong, don't delay the future development of my Xuanyin school by doing unnecessary things." Sect Master, what do you mean? Fairy Jietxiong was stunned and asked, "This matter, how should I put it?" Fairy Jietxiong, have you noticed that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth seems to be different from before? If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.